Sal Cooper was the strongest shadow in his clan, which was the name given to people who were assigned to do dirty work, murder, arson, espionage, and much more. So all the dark deeds of the clan were done by his hands. Having dedicated himself entirely to his family, he was ultimately betrayed and humiliated even by his friends. In the end, the head of the clan declared that Sal, having remained a shadow, had betrayed the family for the sake of base personal interests and sentenced him to immediate execution. These words became a signal, and the guy was pierced by thousands of swords, and the mentor whom he completely trusted turned out to be a traitor. Before leaving, Alan only smiled slyly and said that he would reveal the secret to him. When Sal became a shadow, the Shadow Oath spell was cast on him. With this sinister technique, his strength was sucked out like food, and all blows intended for the main one were absorbed by his shadow. However, Sal was not going to accept his fate and decided that he would take the enemy with him at the last moment. But even his desperate desire for revenge was not fulfilled, and he died without honor. And yet, in spite of everything, fate gave him a chance for rebirth. When Sal opened his eyes, he found himself in a new body, but in a familiar place. Recalling the skills of his past life, he instantly stood up, sensing the presence of a dangerous person nearby. The first thing that came to mind was that maybe he was in hell, but the place looked somehow different, even familiar. While he was thinking about this, a large woman entered the room and rudely ordered him to wash up because they would come for him soon. Sal just looked at her darkly, as if he was ready to kill her with his own hands. The woman didn't like his look. She hit him hard and contemptuously called him a little bastard. The blow was powerful enough and Sal fell to the ground. He looked at her in surprise and, hearing the little rascal, looked in the mirror where everything became clear. Realizing what was happening, Sal grinned happily, realizing what this meant for him. He seems to be back in his 3-year-old body. Now he is truly reborn and will be able to carry out his revenge. Therefore, after being reborn, he swore to himself that he would not make the same mistakes in this life. A few moments later, his stomach began to rumble and he realized that he was hungry, as if he hadn't eaten in 3 days. At that moment, a mouse squeak was heard in the corner, and the boy immediately turned his attention there. He looked at the mouse with a bloodthirsty expression, thinking that he would eat it first to satisfy his hunger, since in his past life it was considered a delicacy on the battlefield. But just as he was about to do so, several men entered the room and called him trash. They said that Master Alan wanted to see him, and without delay they began to drag him along with them. Sal realized that in his past life, it was at this age that he was chosen as a shadow, but the memories of the ceremony were completely gone. He assumed that his enemy had poisoned him with his blood magic, but now it was different, and he smiled slyly. Then he bit into the arm of the man who was dragging him and bit it almost until it bled. People shouted that this boy was clinging to them like a dog and ordered them to seize him. One of them raised his hand to hit the little rascal, but, using his instincts, the hero noticed the attack, dodged, and reached for the man's weapon. He managed to pull the sword out of its sheath and easily cut off the attacker's hand. The remaining man was horrified by what he saw and thought that the boy probably knew how to handle a sword. Sal was already feeling the thirst for blood at this point and, smiling, thought that he finally got a chance for revenge. Shadow Oath is an ancient blood magic spell that allows you to make the target of the spell your shadow by paying a few drops of blood. At the same time, the shadow cannot harm the owner. On the contrary, it receives damage for him, and the owner takes all the strength and abilities accumulated by the shadow. This spell was so cruel that over 100 years ago, the Empire passed a law requiring the destruction of all books that mentioned it, and also introduced a complete ban on its use, soon after which Alan reprimanded his subordinate. He said that he was a worthless person and not worthy of being called part of their family if some dog could defeat him with such ease. The servant asked for forgiveness, and the boy approached the main character and asked how he dared to resist his master's people. Sal didn't react to these words and simply looked in the direction of the speaker. The young master approached him and, smiling a mad smile, ordered his subordinates to throw him into prison so that he could rot there. The servants immediately agreed, but suddenly a woman appeared and asked Alan to wait a little. She explained that such behavior was natural for the boy since he grew up a street child. It was Hera Cooper, the head of the family and Alan's mother. She continued to say that now was not the time for punishment, because the initiation ceremony was more important and her son should not forget her words. Then the mother came closer to the young gentleman and asked what they were going to do today, which stunned him. The son was very surprised and thought that he did not understand why his mother chose this insignificant bastard, and his shadow. In any case, if the opportunity presented itself, he would have to kill him. But now he told his mother with a sly smile that he supported her plan. Hera also smiled, reminding him that he was the future head of the family and said that she would lead everyone out, leaving them alone. She ordered her subordinates to vacate the room and leave Master Alan alone, asking them to cast a spell to muffle the sound so that no one could interfere. Naturally, the servants immediately agreed, quickly left the room, and the boy poured the liquid into the glass. He then raised his glass high and proudly announced that from that moment on they would all become soldiers in his shadow army and swear allegiance to their family. The children immediately began to swear, promising with all their soul and body to devote themselves to the head of the family and give everything they had. Sal stood silently to the side, looking into the glass he was holding in his hand. A moment later, he turned the glass over and drank its contents to the bottom. At that moment, the glass fell to the ground and all the other children, including the main character, fell with it. The young gentleman approached his followers with a knife in his hands and said with a grin that this whole crowd of fools couldn't even tell the difference between poison and holy water, after which he made a cut on his finger until it bled and dripped a few drops right where the children were lying. Immediately after this, a magic circle appeared, and the boy solemnly announced that from now on, their power and abilities belong only to him, and they will take on all his wounds. The spell spread around like a shadow, absorbing space. The children, including the main character, were also affected by its effect. Alan felt the power filling him and was convinced that the shadow oath had worked. He didn't even imagine that everything would turn out to be so simple, because he considers himself a true genius, and decided that he needed to please his mother with good news. He immediately turned towards the exit and began to address the woman. But as soon as he took a step, he felt a sharp pain in his leg. He fell, not understanding what was happening and why his legs refused to obey him. It was strange if this was a side effect of the shadow oath, but his mother never warned him about it, which seemed suspicious. In panic, tears appeared in his eyes, and he called pitifully for his mother. At that moment, Sal rose to his feet and calmly noted that in front of him was only a pathetic coward accustomed to hiding behind his mother's skirt. But the irony is that his mother cast a soundproof spell so that no one would disturb them, and no matter how loud Alan shouted, no one would hear him. The boy turned around and noticed Richard in the corner, looking at him with hatred and holding a weapon in his hands. Alan, horrified, asked how Sal had woken up and how he knew about the oath. But Sal only coldly asked if he was really scared and added that he knew much more. Then he added that if he could cancel the oath, what would Alan do? After these words, Sal clutched the weapon and thrust it into Alan with fury. The pain was unbearable. His heart felt like it was bursting out of his chest. He didn't understand why this was happening and begged Sal to stop. But Richard only reminded that in his past life, he had to die to get back what Alan had taken from him. This time he was not going to give in so easily. Pointing the gun at Alan, he declared that this was simply an eye for an eye. Suddenly, a loud sound was heard outside the door, attracting the attention of the others. The subordinates informed the lady that the protective spell had been destroyed, and she became worried about her son. In the darkness of the night, one of her subordinates assured her that the young master was fine. He had simply exhausted his strength using a powerful spell. Speaking about the destruction of the protective barrier, he added that one of the servants was distracted during the spell, and he was killed. The woman looked at him coldly and calmly ordered that his body be fed to the dogs. The man bowed down and noticed that the young master looked a little nervous, but that was natural since he was still too young for this. This tension took its toll on him. Alan was confused and felt that something important had happened, but he could not understand what it was. His thoughts were interrupted by his mother gently placing her hand on his head. She told him warmly that he shouldn't worry about the shadows because they were just the laws of the jungle and he would become stronger. But before Hera could finish speaking, the boy suddenly pushed her hand away. His gaze was full of madness as he confidently said that he was the future head of the Cooper family, and every little thing was obliged to sacrifice their lives for him. Then he turned to his mother and asked if his thoughts were correct, to which she, with a satisfied smile, confirmed that her son understood everything correctly. If he needed anything, let him say so, and she would do everything for him. The boy gratefully stated that he could not find a better mother. Nearby, the main character watched this family idol, quietly muttering with a grin, "Well, isn't that a cute couple?" But his own gaze was no less insane, for now Alan Cooper was his shadow. In his past life, Sal, in his battles for his family, found a tome of blood magic containing another oath of shadows. Of course, he brought it to the head of the family, but even then he was captured by her shadow. Fortunately, he managed to study the text of the book and combine the knowledge he gained with the experience of returning power from a past life. Now, to break the oath, he only needs a drop of blood and it will change everything between him and Alan. However, he is only 3 years old and is still too weak to resist them. Now he needs to become stronger. He takes the first step towards great power. His choice fell on the Fiery Mountain, a testing ground created by the Cooper family for testing shadows and selecting the strongest. The children there faced harsh trials similar to the torments of Prometheus. Every day their bodies were tormented by the claws of eagles. The Cooper family sent young children to this mountain to endure the thorny path with eagles tearing at their flesh. Even death was not a reason to retreat. Only the first shadow that reached the top could gain the blessing of the eagle griffin. Whoever survives this test will gain a body invulnerable to any torture or wounds. The instructor, addressing the children, made it clear that they had only 3 days to reach the summit. Methods were not important. His name was Enos Walker, and he was a shadow master. He also reminded that anyone who refuses will be executed on the 3rd day. After this, Enos brought the whistle to his mouth, adding that all this was for the glorious future of the shadows. Following the whistle, a signal was heard, announcing the start of the test. The children around were frozen with fear, and no one dared to move from their place. But the coach suddenly noticed one of them. It was the main character, who walked with a confident, slow gait. The coach chuckled, noticing his self-confidence. One of the subordinates clarified that it was Sal Cooper, the bastard who had enraged the young master yesterday, to which the man said that everything was now clear to him. Very soon, the main character approached a huge rock and began to calmly climb it with his bare hands. The instructor couldn't help but laugh, predicting that the boy would crash before even reaching the halfway point. One of the spectators said that since he was so persistent, they could immediately go to him to take his body. But Enos, with a sly smile, replied that he had a better idea because now the time had come and he had to appear. And indeed, soon frightened children's voices were heard asking what it was. Horror filled their hearts when they saw the bloody silhouettes of terrible creatures in the sky. And in panic, the children began to scream that it was a monster. Sal continued his way up and decided to find out what exactly had attracted the children's attention. A moment later, he noticed a griffin that was devouring the children to get rid of them. Only the main character remained among the living, and it was him that the creature noticed with interest. Enos reached for his bow and noted that the boy had angered Master Allen yesterday, so why not use the griffin to take him out? After this, let the young gentleman at least be a little happy about the current situation. An arrow was fired towards the griffin, but it easily dodged it. Then the griffin turned his attention to the main character and asked with interest who dared to do this. Without thinking, he rushed into the attack, declaring that this fool must die, and the hero thought that he could say the same about him. He then jumped up trying to dodge, knowing that he had already been through this once. Because there is only one way to get the griffin's blessing and tame it as quickly as possible. This creature was a high-level monster with a danger level of 4 stars and was born on a flame mountain, and its gender was female. According to rumors, she developed psychic abilities to communicate with humans after eating many human brains. In addition, this creature was in alliance with the Cooper family, a stubborn griffin with human-like intelligence. If the hero cannot completely defeat her, he will not be able to tame her. He knew this meant he had to give it his all. Therefore, without stopping for a second, he rushed from side to side to attack the creature. The griffin also did not stand aside and tried to fight back with the magic that it accumulated in its mouth. After the spell, a storm arose that knocked the young boy off his feet. After he hit the ground, he began to fall head first down the slope. Luckily for Sal, he managed to grab onto the ledge, but he was too reckless and now he is 3 years old instead of 30. Even his sword skills from his past life were of no help in this situation, since with his current size, the griffin would have been able to swat him down before he could get close. The boy knew that there was another way to get rid of her. He just needed to get to the cave on the mountain. While he was thinking, the griffin was not going to restore the attack and created a huge magic ball. A few seconds later, he released the attack and it hit right at the guy's feet. Sal understood that this was powerful wind magic. Every time the griffin released streams of wind from its mouth, it increased its strength from 1 to 10. Therefore, even if 100 people like him gathered here, it would not be enough. Only at this moment did the hero remember something else. Turning around in the other direction, he jumped up and found himself right in front of the cave. He thought that since he couldn't dodge her attacks, why not use her power to get to the cave? The boy blocked her attack with his weapon, and the blast wave sent him flying straight towards the cave. He decided that in order to minimize the damage, he would immediately use the power of the Shadow Oath to take the power from Alan. Young Alan, who had been sitting quietly at his desk, suddenly collapsed on the floor, and the subordinate, puzzled, asked what had happened to him since he had lost consciousness. Using his strength, the hero reached the cave and realized that everything had worked out as planned. But he couldn't relax and needed to hurry. The griffin knew perfectly well where the man was heading and immediately gave chase. Then she shouted at the little fool, "Where was he running off to so quickly?" After a moment, her ardor died down and she stopped, asking what was going on. The boy grabbed the baby griffin and held it hostage, so it begged for salvation. And the hero said that few people know that the baby of such a creature was born with broken wings. The Griffin indignantly asked what he was going to do with her baby, to which Sal replied that he did not want to harm him. On the contrary, he wants to help and heal his wings so that he can rise into the air. The interlocutor was shocked to hear such news, but the boy slyly noted that he had one condition. After a while, she said that they should go, because they needed to tell Mr. Allen about this, and they would definitely be revived. The protagonist's voice was heard behind him, noting that he would then be able to drop them off at his place. The men realized that Sal Cooper was definitely alive, and the boy said that he would only have to disappoint them and send them straight to hell, and then they would wait for him there. The guards were completely perplexed and, running away from the monster, said that such a thing was simply impossible. However, these people had no chance to escape, and the bloodthirsty monster tore their bodies apart, after which the Griffin declared that she had fulfilled her part of the deal and now it was the boy's turn. Sal offered to go and let her take him to the dungeon in the northernmost part of this mountain range. The conversation turned to the Land of Stones, to which they soon arrived, and the creature declared that, as agreed, he would receive Perseus's sword. Now he needs to get her some jellyfish blood, which can heal any wound. And the hero said with a smile that there won't be any problems with that. Sal thought it was a pity that his real goal wasn't the sword at all, and certainly not helping the Griffin. The creature swung open the door ahead with its huge limb, and the hero wondered how to use the Griffin to destroy this dungeon. Behind the door was a fairly large room, in the center of which stood a stone statue of Medusa. There were other statues inside, which the boy and the Griffin saw when they entered. In a past life, when Alan was 12, his mother sent an army of shadows to get Perseus's sword for him. However, in this dungeon there was a statue of Medusa, capable of turning all living things into stone. As a result, many shadows similar to the main character fell in battle, protecting Alan from her, and only Sal remained alive. However, Perseus's sword could only belong to level S geniuses, and the hero had no way to lift it. Alan, being a gifted youth, easily took the sword and defeated the Medusa. Then the boy became the chosen one, and for this he received countless resources, a good reputation, and many loyal servants. Sal said that while he knew he couldn't get the weapon himself, he couldn't let Alan get his hands on it either. Soon the Griffin asked where the sword and the Medusa's blood were, and why there was only a pile of stones around. Suddenly, they heard the stone door they had entered through slam shut. The monster screamed in panic at the boy, asking if this was really his clever trick. But the boy, with a surprised and wary look, pointed his finger saying that something was moving behind. The Griffin turned around instantly and noticed how the statues began to move, trying to attack. The creature had no choice but to rush into battle, and she exclaimed that these stupid stones had come to life. Trying to save himself, the hero stated that he did not know when it happened. The Griffin continued to fight, smashing the stone statues into dust. The fragments of the destroyed monsters began to gather together, and the boy asked in surprise if they could change their shape and unite. These creatures were merciless and cruel, without faces, as if the three Graya sisters shared one tooth and one eye. The Griffin noted that they, like the jellyfish, are the daughters of the praying mantis, and therefore can control the water element. So the hero shouted that they had to run, but the creature asked what the point was if they needed to find the sword. The main character continued to run away in panic, claiming that he was the one he was looking for. The interlocutor noted that if this continued, the ceiling would collapse and they would die here. Sal added that he was indeed looking for it, and there were runes on the wall that could point to the solution. Despite his anxiety, the boy thought that this was just a wonderful situation. The dungeon was about to collapse and bury them under a pile of stones. But he will quickly find that very secret passage that he found in his past life, only he doesn't have enough strength yet. The hero pointed up and said that the runes said, "Get rid of the eye on the ceiling and the attacks will stop." After this, the monster asked about what other eye on the ceiling, and looked up. When she saw that there was indeed an eye there, she immediately rushed to attack him. She declared that she would take it off immediately and quickly flew up, grabbing it in her beak. The water monster, which had been attacking all the time, immediately froze and began to scream loudly. The creature's body began to melt like ice, turning into ordinary water. The Griffin stopped and said in admiration that they really did become water. It was incredible. The hero added that according to the runes, Perseus learned of the location of Medusa precisely after he stole Graia's eye, so the eyes are their weakness. The monster asked the boy where the promised things were that could heal her child, because this eye could probably help. Sal replied that if we were talking about the sword, then it was in that direction, and pointed his finger in that direction. The Griffin paid attention and indeed saw the sword shining in the darkness. When Perseus cut off Medusa's head with this sword, red and green blood flowed from it. Red blood could poison any living creature, and green blood had the power to heal any wound. But this is just a myth, and this dungeon holds another mystery. The griffin asked what he meant, to which the boy replied that when Perseus's sword reappeared within these walls, Medusa would be resurrected. And so it happened. The griffin watched in horror as the jellyfish came back to life and began to attack. Her long hair, transformed into a snake, began to attack everything around her with fury. The protagonist thought with a grin that it seemed like it was time for him to get out of here. The only way to awaken the statue of Medusa was to cut off its head with Perseus's sword. When the boy tried to leave the mysterious portal, he was suddenly overcome by a wave of danger. But relying on his instincts and skills from his past life, he dodged it with ease. Sal instantly took up a fighting stance and focused his gaze on the jellyfish. At the same time, he could not understand what was happening and where the griffin was hiding. The griffin, hiding behind a rock, whispered that this creature looked even more frightening than the previous one, and that now she did not want to die. The protagonist was shocked and wondered if his griffin could shrink, but his thoughts were interrupted by a griffin that rushed to attack, and Sal remembered how he had already passed this dungeon in a past life and knew what to do. First of all, he needed to get the shield of the Knights of the Round Table, which was nearby. Thanks to the reflective power of this shield, he will be able to avoid the direct gaze of the jellyfish. Moreover, this weapon can withstand a deadly attack from her eyes. The boy just managed to grab the shield when the jellyfish rushed to attack again. Her death ray was so powerful that Sal had a hard time staying on his feet. A moment later, unable to withstand the force of the blow, he flew to the side and blood gushed from his mouth. Rising with difficulty, Sal realized that the situation was becoming critical and that the shield alone was not enough to save him. It could also be seen that she had destroyed the exit from the dungeon through which he intended to escape. The boy could not physically take Perseus's sword, although perhaps this was not entirely true. He couldn't know this for sure unless he tried, and he had to take a risk. Otherwise, he would simply die. Even if he has to put his life on the line, he still has to do it. A few moments later, he ran up to the weapon and picked it up, surprised to think that he had simply picked up a sword. But his thoughts were interrupted by Medusa, who pierced his body with her snake. The stone creature lifted him up, and the boy wondered why this was happening, since he was not gifted from birth, and how he managed to lift the sword remained a mystery. Something was clearly wrong because, in his past life, Alan had bullied him and wouldn't let him touch a weapon because of his low level. When the hero was chained to the cross, the mother and son discussed whether he would find out that they had taken away his natural talent, and decided that amnesia could solve this problem. Now the hero understood what was going on, because Alan's fencing talent had passed on to him. After some thought, Sal immediately used his power, and his body gradually began to heal. The griffin was very perplexed when he saw what had happened, but it so happened that the boy standing in front of her remained safe and sound after her grip. In her eyes, he seemed like a real monster that couldn't be killed just like that. The boy used the weapon and easily cut off the jellyfish's head. As mentioned, several types of blood, red and blue, flowed out of the creature's body, and the hero collected the blue, thinking that in his past life, his swordsmanship level was S. But Alan's mother used magic to steal his talent and give it to her son, then erased his memory. That's the truth. When the main character realized all this, he began to laugh loudly, and the griffin, sitting nearby, did not understand what was happening to this guy. Sal smiled madly, thinking that the situation was getting more and more interesting, and let Alan's whole family just wait for him. The creature that had turned into a dwarf thought that no matter what happened, as long as this man was going crazy, it was better to leave quickly. When she actually decided to leave, the boy noticed this and shouted, calling her to come to him. The monster stopped and asked why she was called, thinking that she was a high-level being, so why were they afraid of her? Sal asked her if she had a strong head, to which his interlocutor asked in surprise what he meant. Shortly after this conversation, the creature transformed into a huge creature and flew out of the cave, breaking through the passage with its head. She thought that this man had been using her to destroy the dungeon from the beginning, but since he had agreed to heal her cub, she would forgive him. Dark and green energy began to seep out from beneath the ruins of the cave. In the place where the part of the jellyfish's head was located, the energy flowed to the rune located in this cave. When enough power had accumulated, the creature's eyes opened. Soon, Griffin and Sal Cooper found themselves on the mountain, and she said that as a griffin, she was blessing him. She also gave him an indestructible body, and no matter how many times he was hit, he would remain unharmed. The boy immediately felt that he had become much more resilient, and even small wounds heal on their own, which significantly minimizes the amount of damage that is transmitted to Alan, and his mother will not suspect anything suspicious. In addition, he needs to hide the fact that he has an S-level talent so as not to attract unnecessary attention. Sal asked the griffin to help heal his cub, and his wings began to recover. The creature immediately responded and began to care for its chick. After a few moments, the power of the jellyfish's blood actually began to heal the little creature's wings. Thanks to this, he became filled with strength and vigor and immediately soared into the sky. His mother happily noted that he was finally able to fly away. The hero said that he had only just begun to learn to fly, and if he did not find an owner before he came of age, he would remain just a stupid bird. The interlocutor asked what he was talking about. The hero replied that it was nothing special. He just wanted to warn her, because she had become strong after finding her master. The griffin thought that it was true. If it weren't for the master, she wouldn't have been able to develop her soul and become stronger, but that man died more than 100 years ago, and she needed an equally strong man. But it was unclear where to find someone who could kill others without effort, without blinking an eye. Suddenly, she realized that the answer lay on the surface. After this, she approached the young boy and addressed him formally. She asked to accept her cub as her magical pet, believing that at such a young age he was much stronger and smarter than his peers. So there is a possibility that in the future he will be able to surpass even Brad. The boy smiled slyly, thinking that she was caught. At the same time, he stated that he agreed and would take it, but only if they made a deal with her, because he wanted to know everything about Brad Cooper. He is also interested in where the precious key that opens the door to Brad's spiritual sword is. Night fell and Hera asked what it meant. Why could no one understand what was happening? Alan fainted twice out of the blue, and it couldn't have just happened. I wonder how long it can go on. The old man asked not to worry, explaining that thanks to the good price, the young master would quickly come to his senses. After all, any damage was taken by the little shadows. The head thought that everything was right. Something strange was happening. It seemed that Alan had become like this after the ceremony with the shadows, and someone was clearly behind this matter. The subordinate added that something unexpected had happened that required her attention. Sal Cooper had placed first on the test exam, as expected. However, this boy used the griffin to kill Walker's uncle and his nephew, and then tamed its cub. The woman was greatly surprised. Throwing down the cup with the drink, she immediately asked where he was, and the man noticed that he was right outside the door and would call him now. Soon the boy slowly approached their room. With a casual smile, he looked at the head of the family and asked what she wanted. The first thing the woman said was, "Why did he kill the Walkers?" And the hero asked what kind of why. The conversation got crazy, and Sal stated that he did it for his family. It was a shame that the shadow trainer was so bad that a simple 3-year-old and their family didn't need such trash. The boy asked the lady if he had done wrong to this man, and at that moment she was speechless from surprise. Hera saw the expression on the child's face and realized that it was anger mixed with disgust. But now he had no fear, and it seemed he had some kind of ace up his sleeve. Smiling sweetly, she asked Doug to give Sal a reward and send him to the Eden Springs for treatment. Sal bowed and expressed his gratitude for her kindness, reflecting on how this place was likely to become indispensable to him. Soon after leaving the head's room, he heard her ordering her subordinate to speed up the study of magic deprivation methods, because they urgently needed to take away Sal's talent. She planned to pass this talent on to her son before the ceremony of inheriting Brad's sword, fearing that if the secret of her son's lack of innate talent was revealed, they might lose their inheritance. Sal Cooper is a real scoundrel, and while she lets him go, they will soon see how far he can go with his insolence. Just a few moments later, the hero headed towards the Springs of Eden where he was sent. Walking slowly through the building, he recalled the words of the Griffin, who said that before his death, Master Brad used forbidden magical art. He sealed his soul in the Eden Springs to pass on his knowledge and sword skills to an S-level talent heir. All this was done so that the Cooper family's status in the Empire would not be shaken after his death. When the boy found himself at the bottom, let the current lead him to an underwater cave. There lies a key that will show the way to the Master, but now something strange is happening in the springs due to the long separation from him, and she does not understand what exactly. She could only say that the Master had blood magic, and it would not be easy for him. The hero thought it was strange how he would get the sword in front of Alan. The children began to whisper. This was the same Sal Cooper who had passed the qualification exam. Someone noticed that he had not only done that, but had also tamed a baby griffin. Lucian Sia, Reno's little servant, asked with a sly grin what was so cool about him, being the son of a wicked woman. Reno Ors, the son of the Cooper family's groom, stood next to him. This so-called aristocrat approached the hero and sarcastically congratulated him, noting that he not only looked like a skinny monkey, but also moved like one. Sal remembered that in his past life they were his subordinates, sent by Alan. They were the ones who fabricated the charges, after which he was recognized as a traitor to the homeland. These guys in the audience were used to power. Reno asked why he was silent and decided to see if his indestructible body would help. At that moment, the boy swung his hand at the hero, and he immediately noticed that he was being attacked. But he did not flinch for a second. Raising his hand, he deftly grabbed the hand of his opponent. At the same time, he said that if he really wanted to, then let him try, and then sharply twisted his arm to the side. The servant, seeing what had happened, pulled out a knife, became angry, and declared that this scoundrel was definitely looking for death. A moment after the attack, blood gushed out, but the attacking boy began to tremble. The hero, covering himself with Reno's body, felt the knife plunge straight into the boy's chest. Sal smiled slyly and, as if he didn't notice, said that he was sorry because he accidentally used this guy as a shield. Then he pushed him forward and kicked him towards the servant. Reno and Lucian fell into the water together. The hero noted that they were lucky because this water can heal any wound, so let them swim a little. After all, he would still need them for their joint practice. He was thinking about how he would make them obey him unquestioningly in this life. The body of the guy who was injured was sinking into the water, and dark energy began to appear there. At that moment, Sal caught the scent of dark magic. It was unclear to him how such evil and forbidden magic could appear in the healing springs. It was similar to what the griffin had said, something strange. So he decided that it was better not to go into the water and that he should find another way to get to the bottom of the spring without touching the water. The boy's thoughts were interrupted by the cry of the girl asking for help. He knew this voice well from his past life. The man pulled her, constantly saying that she couldn't even serve tea properly. So in his opinion, she deserved a good beating. But the little girl begged him to let go. Sal realized that it was Adelia, the same girl who was being dragged by the enraged man. He shouted whether she dared to object, and that he was going to hit her now. However, he did not succeed, and just a moment later his words were interrupted. The main character, using his weapon, cut through all the obstacles. The other children screamed in panic that a man had been killed and that someone had to inform the guards. Sal approached his young interlocutor and asked with concern if everything was okay with her. He smiled so sweetly that the girl involuntarily felt comfortable next to him. But she herself was shaking all over, and Sal did not understand how he could have frightened her. So he began to apologize for the fright, but Adelia, embarrassed, quickly replied that this was not so. She sincerely thanked him for saving her. A little shyly, she noticed that her name was Adelia, and asked what his name was. This girl was his best friend in a past life, possessing magical talent that surpassed the powers of her peers. They even once had the chance to fight together on the battlefield, which was an unforgettable experience. The most important thing was not that they liked each other even in the past, but even now, at a young age, she was a very sweet girl who noticed that he was a disintegrated Cooper and still thanked him for saving her. Sal looked at her again and blushed because he really liked her. A little embarrassed, he smiled and said that there was no problem, because a gentleman would always do the same. Let him just call him Sal. However, he asked if Adelia knew how to empty this source or get to the bottom without touching the water. He knew he shouldn't forget about his mission, and since he had found the girl, everything should work out. Adelia asked if he had noticed it too. The boy asked, a little surprised what her friend was talking about, leaning over. She whispered that there was some strange magic in this source. This magic heals any wounds, but once it touches a person, no other means can heal his body. Sal realized that this was another way for the Cooper family to control their shadows, forcing them to seek treatment. Adelia said that she wanted to thank him for saving her and knew a way to get to the bottom without touching the water. She concentrated, and streams of energy wrapped around her body, creating something amazing around her. They developed protective shells, and she called it duck magic because it made them look like ducks. Even when at the bottom, their feathers never get wet on the inside. The hero realized that this was the magic of insulation, and she had a strange habit of calling it that since childhood. At this time, several of the chief's subordinates approached, talking about the guy who killed a man. Sal realized that things were bad, so he grabbed the girl's hand, pulling her towards the pond. In a moment, their bodies were completely immersed in the magical water. Below, the boy saw that the underwater current led straight to the source, and perhaps they should move there. Adelia noticed what was happening and tried to tell them that they couldn't go there and that they needed to leave quickly. But at that moment, it was already too late. The rapid flow of water began to pull them deeper and deeper. After some time, the girl sat next to the hero's body, trying to wake him up from his unconscious state. Suddenly, he heard a voice calling him and instantly opened his eyes. Gradually rising, he looked around the cave and wondered if this was it. He took out a key, and Adelia looked at it with curiosity and asked what kind of object it was. Sal replied that it was a precious key that could open the door leading to the spiritual sword. Adelia noticed that there was no door here and suggested that perhaps they would need to summon it somehow. She added that she didn't know what a spiritual sword was, but she still wanted to try it. Using her power, she tried to direct the key to its owner in order to open the door that would lead to him. As she tried, the plants on the ceiling began to move. Sal immediately sensed that something was wrong and said it really badly. The plants turned out to be monsters trying to attack them, and having grabbed the girl, the hero ran away. A moment later, they fell and the boy lying on the ground looked around. Looking back, he saw the plant open a horrible mouth full of teeth and felt the magic that told him the door had appeared. However, a problem arose. Adelia was unconscious and he did not know what to do about it. So he picked her up in his arms and hurried to a safer place. Realizing that he could do nothing, he decided to leave her here temporarily. Sal cast the invisibility magic she taught him in her past life on her, so that she wouldn't be found if enemies got in. A difficult battle awaited him ahead, and this was only a test on the way to Brad's sword. So he began to move slowly towards that very terrible door, behind which he discovered many corpses. The hero lost confidence at the sight of dead bodies, but continued on his way. At the top of a hill made entirely of human bodies stood a creature with a victim in its hands. It did something strange to her, as if it were sucking out her life force. When the creature sensed the hero, it turned to him and greeted him. The Eden Springs turned out to be not only a place of rest and healing, but also a place where the Cooper family kept their concubines. Sal realized what had happened to these women and wondered if they had all become food for the sword. Before he could come to his senses, a monster appeared next to him. The monster began to sniff him slowly and said that he really could smell an S-level talent. Sal instantly became wary and jumped away from the monster. He couldn't understand how this creature knew about his level. The opponent used blood magic and suggested that he was Alan Cooper, the very child gifted with S-level from birth. This boy did not look like a spoiled heir, and the monster added mockingly that most likely he was just a bastard who was hoping for an inheritance. Their weapons soon clashed, and the monster declared that he would not give it up just like that. Sal must first pass a test. Sal, without hesitation, threw out the answer that he was just ready to kill him, which surprised his rival, who did not expect such determination from his descendant. To be honest, the monster noted, this was overly presumptuous. The opponents immediately rushed to the attack, and the furious blows between them did not stop for a moment. The monster's brutal and devastating power impressed Sal, leaving him slightly stunned. Coming closer, the monster noted with mockery that the boy was still too weak. Taking a closer look at Sal's body, the monster was surprised to notice something special. His wounds began to heal, and the monster wondered if this was a gift from the griffin, because he did not expect that this brainless bird would recognize him. Of course, he hadn't seen the griffin for a long time, and Sal knew that Brad had sacrificed a huge part of his power to seal his soul in the sword. Now the boy needs to get it, and maybe with his strength he even has a chance. A few moments later, he rose to his feet and summoned magic to strike his opponent. The monster's limbs were immediately struck by this technique, and he asked if this was forbidden blood magic. Sal replied that the creature had long since died and did not know that over the past 100 years the Empire had created several secret techniques to combat blood magic. And now he is going to kill him, rip out his heart, and get the inheritance. Hearing this, the monster immediately screamed at Sal not to do this. But when Sal's weapon was about to touch his neck, the monster suddenly smiled. The monster broke free of the magic and grinned, noting that it wasn't scary, leaving Sal confused. Trying to strike faster, Sal saw the monster fly away, continuing to laugh and saying that he hadn't played with such a small opponent for a long time. But now, he declared, the game was over and he was tired of having fun. Of course, he admits that Sal has strength and talent, but while he was speaking, he had already used blood magic. From the pool of blood, small ghosts appeared, of which there were a large number. Brad said that his strength was not enough to gain the right to own his sword. The boy got into a defensive stance and realized that he could use the cow to create spirits, and that this was a huge power. Suddenly, one of the ghosts, which the man had literally just summoned, attacked the guy from behind. Sil tried to dodge them as well as attack him in response, but he realized that they were attacking him too often. So in order to protect himself, he used the Holy Sword's protection magic, deciding that he needed to use Perseus's sword to protect himself from his magic. Brad picked up his defensive technique and, touching his finger, said it was useless. A few moments after his phrase, the protective power immediately collapsed, and the hero became defenseless again. But the monster did not stay in place and immediately approached the boy, grabbing him by the throat. Then he held it up and said that this man should know that after the cat has played with the mouse, he will eventually eat it. Something rather strange was happening, and the protagonist felt that his blood, as well as his strength, were gradually leaving. The creature, overjoyed, said that his aura was so warm and familiar, one of his concubines had the same one, and perhaps it was his mother. Something immediately switched in the boy's mind when he heard about his own mother. But the monster, trying to swallow him whole, said that it was great because he would be able to taste her child. Sal remembered his mother putting him to bed and telling him to go to sleep, because mom is with him and will pet him literally all night long. That time was very joyful, because the boy casually ran after his mother and brought her flowers. But one day, when he was doing this, he fell awkwardly to the ground. That very day, his mother apologized to him and said that he needed to leave. Her son tried to get through to her, but nothing came of it. When the boy was left completely alone, the children constantly beat him and said that he was the son of a concubine and simply a freak, and that no one needed trash. And the main character was a horror when all this was happening and said that it simply could not be him, because even now he was truly sure that his mother definitely could not have abandoned him. All these memories immediately popped into his head when the monster mentioned his mother. His eyes instantly flared with anger at that moment, and the hero thought that it meant that the monster had killed his mother. So he also shouted at the monster. He immediately shouted at the monster about it and plunged his blade straight into its chest. Bloody power immediately began to spread around them in huge streams. Brad was surprised that it was blood-sucking, and a simple boy was able to use its magic. After this, he became a little more serious in the fight and threw the boy aside, thinking that this scoundrel would rather burn his blood than kill him. The creature has indeed spent too much blood and energy on the blood spirits, so it needs to eat a couple more women to replenish its strength. Brad actually started doing it, and the hero came up to him and asked if it tasted good. After that, he sat down and came closer and noticed that he was asking him if his mother was tasty, and at that moment he was simply crazy. And when he pierced the creature's head, blood began to flow and his mother appeared before his eyes. The boy froze for a few seconds before he saw her face with crying eyes. Without stopping for a second, he drove his sword deeper to kill the monster. So after a few moments, the monster's body immediately fell to the ground without strength. To his great surprise, the creature was still alive and thought that the boy had gone completely mad. He needed to retreat and find a couple more concubines. And if this does not happen, he will die anyway. But suddenly he felt a weapon approaching his back. The main character at that moment really went crazy and continued to attack. Brad begged not to kill him at that moment, because he can merge with his ball and become a spiritual weapon and also give him more power, but the boy continued to destroy him. Then, looking at him very dismissively, he said that this monster did not deserve this. After that, he used his power once more, and this destructive power tore the monster's body into pieces. So what was left was only the blood magic that was splashed to the side. The inheritance of swordsmanship after absorption would forever merge with the hero's body. He threw away the weapon and thought, he didn't forget to sharpen it after all, he hadn't seen his mother since she was born. So it was just a crazy fantasy and it's a very pathetic monster. Suddenly I saw his reflection in a pool of blood. His mother, who was hugging him and telling him that he was not a monster and that his mother would always be by his side. And suddenly, her thoughts about the boy were interrupted by a girl who addressed him by name. It was Adelia who was running quickly to him and asking if he was okay. She didn't understand why he was covered in blood and whether he was wounded, and if so, she would heal him. But the boy only looked at her coldly. When the interlocutor came closer, she touched his head and began to heal. The protagonist at that moment realized that in his past life, Adelia became the concubine of this creature. Then he came closer and immediately hugged his girlfriend. At that moment, he promised himself that in this life he would not allow anyone to touch her even with their fingers. Blood-sucking is a technique that allows one to offer one's own blood to the sword and then burn it to enhance the weapon's performance. After the disappearance of the demon that was the spirit of Brad's sword, a real discord began in the Cooper family, and all the guardians of the Springs of Eden were sentenced to death. And the servants, having seen Sal's rage, no longer dared to behave so rudely with Adelia. According to rumors, it was Sal who stole the spiritual sword from the Springs. However, without proof, Alan's mother could only continue her persecution, which included imprisonment, blood sampling, and poisoning. Although the hero remained unharmed in any case, the events now take place 4 years later in the Cooper House training ground. Alan fought with his subjects and mocked them, wondering if they, being weaklings, could even defeat him. The head of the Isaac family, Hugh Isaac, who was watching the fight, said that he had heard that this boy was born with talent, but today he was convinced of it. The head of the Cooper family, Duke Leon, thanked for these words. Suddenly their attention was drawn to a happy donkey who asked to look. On the other side was the main character, who was being attacked by several people. He noticed that they were too noisy. After that, he casually raised his weapon and used the shadow blade. Therefore, literally in one attack these people were defeated, and all immediately fell to the ground. The spectators who stood on the balcony were delighted, because they understood that this was a high-level technique, Isaac said. Usually, children are at the level of an adept of the iron sword. But if we talk about this child, then he has clearly already reached the level of a silver sword defender, and this is simply incredible. He was angry about this and thought that he was a scoundrel for daring to steal his triumph. In a fit of rage, he turned to Sal and said that he was challenging him to a fight. The hero smiled because of this and thought that if Alan had gotten his talent, like in his past life, his strength would be higher now. But now, this is a great chance to find out his current strength and agreed to a duel. The master told him to attack and decided that these are great chances to finish him off. The subordinates immediately began to rejoice and encouraged Alan to buy this bastard and show him the real art of fencing. With admiration and excitement, the boy immediately rushed into the attack and thought that he would defeat him with ease. Sal very easily blocked his attack and told the master to use his power. Because doesn't Mother Nature herself favor him? Alan was shocked by these words, and the hero easily pushed him away with his weapon. When the young master and the services merged and thought that it was impossible, because his mother said that with his current strength, no one could compare to him in battle. He is on the plane. Even the magical aura from the sword is simply insignificant. It is obvious. It is only an artificial enhancement, so there is no talent for fencing. Sal dodged his attack and asked to be allowed to show him what a real punch felt like. A few moments later, the Alan turned around and saw a boy running towards him. The main character aimed at the head and pierced the eye of his opponent. The subordinates were horrified when this happened and immediately began to run to the master, and he cried out pitifully about his eye. After seeing this, Isaac began to burst into laughter at how insignificant this situation was. He said that he had apparently made a mistake and perhaps those servants had just lost. They were just pretending to the master. The interlocutor said that he himself was forgetting. The man added that after all, Mr. Alan was engaged to his younger sister, and he didn't want her to marry a nobody. Leon said that he was worrying too much. If it weren't for the enemy of convenience, then it was unknown whether his sister would have married someone or not. The interlocutor turned around and said that it was time for him not to forget that joint actions between their families would take place in 10 days. Cooper thought about those words, that Alan really was a non-entity. So I asked my subordinate what this shadow's name was. She said that his name was Sal, and he was the son of one of his concubines. The man thought, is it not surprising then that his son is so good with a sword? Then he asked to be brought to his office. After some time, the main character was invited to the Duke's office, and he headed there. When he went out there, the man immediately started looking at him intently. Sal bowed down and asked what the master wanted. Leon thought he saw no innate talent in him. Perhaps the boy is hiding his powers in order to fight for the right to become the heir. One can say that he definitely has some kind of motive. It's good that he's a boy and can be easily exposed. The Duke said that the boy will lead the 10th squad of shadows in 10 days. Together with Isaac's people, they will go to the Lost Crystal City to get dragon eggs for their families. This sword just activates teleportation to the Crystal City. Sal thought that in order to get them, they would certainly encounter the dragon and anger him. He believes that this is a difficult mission and Leon has something planned. However, how could he miss such an opportunity to be a dragon egg? So he took the sword and obeyed the master. He then stated that in return, he would have a small request, and the Duke was very surprised by this. And so the detachment set off after some time, with Sal walking in front, and also Adelia on a griffin. The girl said, didn't he tell the head of the family that she would be accompanying them as a maid? Hey, it's kind of uncomfortable to sit like this all the way. The hero told her not to worry and no one was against it. Then he looked at the guys who had fought with him before, but now obeyed. Sal and his squad finally arrived, and his subordinates asked if this was really the Crystal City, but it was unclear where the crystals and the dragon's nest were. On the other side, a girl's voice appeared, saying that she didn't expect that the elite squad of the Cooper family didn't even know anything about this city. How funny it is for her to talk about this. This is Gloria Isaac, the younger sister of the head of the house and Alan's fiancé. The girl extended her hand to Sal Cooper and said that this was their first meeting, so he could just call her Gloria. But the hero ignored her and told Adelia to stay here with Meow, and he would return soon. Heiress Isaac was angry that he would play her, so she told the boy that she was actually talking to him. Sel called her a lady and said that he was afraid that if they didn't activate the portal before sunset, their entire trip would be in vain. The main character thought that he met this noisy woman again, just like in his past life where she pestered him with her training. Although none of this mattered now, all that was left was to hope that this stupid bird would cope with the task set before it. Together with the girl, they approached the altar, and it began to glow. This altar is a teleportation formation. Soon, everyone was teleported to the city and said that it was beautiful, and also that somewhere here lies the legendary egg. Gloria's subordinate thought that he should kill the Cooper family people, and then the egg would belong to them. And when they return, The chief will definitely reward him for this. The main character at the same time sensed danger, and therefore shouted for everyone to run away faster. A few moments later, there was no explosion, which raised a large amount of dust into the air. At the same time, Guardians of Light appeared around, who are the Guardians of the Crystal City. And Gloria immediately took out her weapon and, rushing into the attack, shouted that they were pathetic scum. Then she used her skill called Thorn Cut and easily hit one of the guards. The girl began to scold the knight for giving him the right to be arrogant. The subordinate replied that it was for the sake of their home, but the interlocutor said that he did it for himself. While the Isaac heiress was distracted, several guards appeared behind her. Milady realized that everything was bad, because she would not have time to react. But suddenly they were immediately destroyed. But it was the main character who did this, using his power. After this, he turned to his subordinate shadows and said that he ordered them to prepare for battle. They, of course, immediately obeyed him and rushed into a furious attack one after another. The man, after a few moments, the entire squad lined up and immediately thrust their swords into the ground, so that soon the shadow began to recede from them. She was heading straight towards the leader of the squad, that is, the main character, who was supposed to use this power. The guards were surprised when they felt her power, and began to look in different directions. Sal rushed to the attack and wanted to see what was better, their shadow or their light power. The energy immediately went to the guards and continued to bind them. The second squad said that these people just grabbed the guards. This is probably the Cooper family's style of combining swordsmanship and magic, and Sal is just a kid, but he has such power. Gloria was embarrassed when this happened, and thought that this boy was very good. A large amount of energy began to accumulate in the crystal at that moment. The guy thought that it was not bad, because he managed to absorb the power of the crystal core. Now he moved from the level of the Silver Blade Guard to the Master of the Golden Sword. Now all that was left was to put the, crystal he was holding in his hands back in its place. So Sal immediately went there and placed the crystal where it needed to be. When this happened, the earth began to shake and it looked like an earthquake had occurred. But it turned out that this was not the case, and the altar was falling, so it was necessary to run quickly to it, because the secret passage to the dragon's lair was open. Those present immediately headed towards this altar, and it gradually began to descend. They all ended up in a dark room, and there were dragon eggs everywhere. The Cooper family's subordinates were glad that there were so many of them here and that they probably wouldn't have to be divided. But a member of a neighboring squad didn't think so. The hero thought, they are idiots, of course, because they so quickly want to become dinner for the dragon. Just as he was beginning to think about this situation, a dragon appeared and began to scream angrily. The main character's subordinates ran away. Gloria said not to do this and to fight to the end. Sal said that when he finished, let them take the dragon egg. At the same time, the altar started to rise on its own, and the others asked what was going on. It turned out that there was a gray there, and he pressed the crystal. Previously, the head of the family said that he should use other shadows as bait for the dragon, and once he got the egg, he should get out of there and also destroy the formation. Sal will be able to stand up for himself. The guy apologized to his comrades and said that only the Cooper family can take possession of the dragon egg. So let them sacrifice their lives while he delivers this egg to the family. Gloria said how cruel the head of their family is, because it is very insidious to act like this not only with them, but also with one's own people. The guy noted that this was expected. The girl asked if that was the case, then why did he come here to certain death? Sal replied that she was thinking too much. Soon they rushed together to attack the dragon, who tried to attack them with his power. Answering his interlocutor's recent question, the hero rushed into the attack and said that everything was happening because he could not die here. So he attacked the creature, and his attack hit its target, causing the monster great pain. But naturally, he stayed alive and immediately counterattacked the guy. That is why after the impact, his body ended up deep in the ground, where the crater was. The dragon tried to finish him off with his attack, but Gloria used the protection of the Moonblade. She did not understand what was happening and whether he was okay. Sal gradually rose and said that you have it good. Let the girl hold him back, and he will attack in the very heart. He asked me very earnestly, I say, to do this, because only we can cope with this. These words, of course, touched the girl, and she agreed with embarrassment. She also thought that she was also a gifted swordsman, and she couldn't let this boy underestimate her. The protagonist only smiled when she rushed forward, and soon the interlocutor told him that now was the time and let him attack. When she noticed that the boy was not responding, she asked what had happened and whether they were not going to do anything. The situation is bad, because he may have hit himself and cannot attack at this rate. They will definitely die. It turns out that now there is only one way out. And without a second thought, she used a skill called Destructive Blade Dance. After using this deadly technique, the clinics would appear out of nowhere and attack the dragon in front. Soon it seemed that the creature immediately fell down without strength and remained in its place. Gloria wondered if it had really worked. The subordinates of the allied detachment immediately ran up to the dragon without kicking it with their feet. They rejoiced. The girl looked at this situation and wondered if she really had succeeded. Suddenly, the creature began to wake up, and the guys noticed this and said that it was bad because the dragon was angry, so they needed to urgently find shelter. Gloria was very surprised by this and asked what happened. Sal, in turn, knew that this would happen, so he just smiled and used the third technique of the sword's inheritance. Namely, he took advantage of the attack of the bloody shadows and attacked the creature. The blood that came out from his weapon quickly, who was heading towards the dragon and enveloped his body. After the guy, phantoms appeared, which he summoned as if Brad had summoned when they were fighting together. The subordinates were surprised that he turned the blood of the dragons of his clones. Gloria said that it was forbidden. Maya, or the Cooper family, wished to have the right to use it. Then I thought that only Brad Cooper could use it. But he recently disappeared, and suddenly I realized that the boy did nothing on purpose and was waiting until he beat the blood out of him. This really pissed her off, so she said that Cooper was a petty scoundrel and it was unclear how he could take advantage of her. The hero rushed into the attack and said that everything was fine. He thought that in his past life he was used because he was trash, but in this one, he will not sit back and wait for death. The dragon's head was cut off by his weapon within moments. So the girl fell to the ground and blood gushed out of her and screamed that this was not bad, and the demonic dragon was defeated. As soon as she tried to get closer to the guy and rejoice with him, he pointed a gun and told her not to come closer. His gaze at that moment was as if insane, and dark power emanated from the weapon and from the body. He and the hero tried to hold back the force that was trying to take over his body. Brad appeared in his consciousness, asking if he really thought he could live peacefully after the murder, that he would become the same as he was, because he will need to absorb a lot of blood and flesh from his victims. These people should be attacked right now because they are not his prey and should be enjoyed to the fullest. The boy rushed to attack and shouted that more blood was needed. His subordinates ran away shouting that he had become a demon because he had used a lot of blood. And suddenly Adelia appeared, who used her power and immediately turned to Sal. The boy's body was covered with energy, and soon he immediately fell to the ground. That moment, he seemed to continue to sink into the dark blood, but the girl tried to save him and pull him out of there. After a while, he heard a familiar voice asking him to wake up, so he opened his eyes and saw Adelia sitting next to him. The girl noticed that she was glad he woke up. She used a purification spell, and it set the transformation into a demon, so they were able to get out of there. After this, she stood up and began to talk happily about the egg she had received. The guy who tried to run away with it was captured, and the girl said that it was the last whole egg. Of course, she didn't tell the Isaac family about him, and that red-haired girl had already left, so he didn't have to worry about having dealt with their task. Sal thanked her for this and said that now he could rest easy. I thought that there was originally a plan to save this girl from the Cooper family. He wanted Meow to take her away from here to fake her death. And calling it all an accident, he grabbed his weapon and shouted that this stupid bird couldn't even cope with a simple task. The griffin wanted to say that he was not guilty, and the hero continued to scold him. But the girl tried to stir up the situation and asked to discuss all this and not to react so violently. Suddenly, the hero heard the groom's son addressing him and looked at him. The boy saw these children grab their weapons and try to attack. That's why he was worried and said that they had finally shown their true colors, so we should try to take the egg away from him. But at that moment, I was very surprised when I saw what actually happened. Because his subordinates pierced the body of the guy who tried to frame them, and then each of the shadows knelt down right in front of the master. The boy asked for forgiveness for the rudeness that had happened earlier. If it weren't for him, they would have died in the ruins. From now on, they no longer obey the orders of the family and will follow him until death and even after it. Sal was very surprised because he did not expect that he would have such loyal subordinates. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to Adelia, who told Sal to look, because the dragon egg began to hatch. In fact, a few moments later, a dragon appeared, roaring happily, and it turned out that he was really born. Sal immediately said that the dragon would only agree to submit to the strongest, so he asked if he wanted to be with him. The creature flew up to him and touched his hand and kindly agreed. The groom's son and his friend said that this was great, because the dragon was now with them. So the new subordinates congratulated the master on taming the dragon, and today the rebel squad of Sal Cooper was born. At the estate, Alan asked her mother when they would go horse riding, and she replied that it would happen as soon as her father finished work. The man shouted, "What's the point? He's just having fun, and he's no better than a bastard." He knows that Sela was not only able to kill the dragon, but also tame the baby. Hera said that it wasn't Alan's fault, and why was he mad at him? If he had been there instead of Sal, he would have coped just as well. The boy only agreed with her. Then the mother said that there was nothing to talk about and took her son by the hand, declaring that they would go skating today, just the two of them. The boy happily ran out of the room and asked for the whip to be brought quickly. The lady approached the old man and asked how the research on magic was progressing. He said not to worry, because they had successfully completed the research. Now all that's left is to find a level S test subject to test the spell's functionality and then use it on Sal Cooper. The woman said, with madness and disgust in her voice, that it was good. This time they would get rid of him for good. 5 years have passed since all these events. The hero was sitting with Adelia, and she said that after this procedure he would be completely cleansed. After all, he will be completely protected from turning into a demon and will be able to use his techniques without any problems. Smiling sweetly, Sal thanked her. The girl closed her mouth, saying that it was not worth it, because she should thank him for the new staff, and she really liked it. At that moment, they saw a silhouette from the window and immediately became wary. The hero immediately opened it and noticed that someone was coming. Of course, he had already run away, but judging by the figure, it was the butler. By that time, subordinates entered the house and told Mr. Cooper that they had come to report on his mission, had been watching the family's palace the whole time, and had found out everything. They gathered dark magicians to perform some kind of ritual in 3 days. It was said that they found a person with S-level talent, and he has incredible abilities. The guy wondered if this was true, but why did they need another target instead of chasing him? They found someone else. And the thought immediately popped into his head that their target was Adelia. The scheduled time had passed, and the girl was rummaging through the warehouse because it was a mess. Suddenly she heard someone behind her, and it was the butler who was trying to hit her. A few moments later, he grabbed her and put a handkerchief with a substance that would make her fall asleep. Even though the girl tried to resist somehow, she felt that she was losing consciousness. Soon she was already in the magic circle, and the dark magic was performing a ritual. The butler, like the others, did all this and asked the darkness to give them power over strength, as if a shadow follows a person. The old man tried to kill the girl and realized that when her blood merged with magical information, all power would belong to him. She, as soon as he tried to hit in the place where the girl was, she disappeared somewhere, and he was surprised. The man heard the voice of Adelia, who was somewhere nearby, and said that it was just a simple illusion. The interlocutor was very angry at that moment and told the old man not to underestimate her. Without thinking for a second, she used her staff in a skill called Starlight Chains. So the opponent who tried to kill her was soon tied up, after which he was surprised, because this little girl turned out to be more cunning than he thought. Then he turned to the dark wizards and said that they were standing there doing nothing. Let them at least help him. At this, Adelia sat down and thought that he sat down and said to simply close her eyes after this and cover her ears. The butler heard something strange in the sky and did not understand what was going on. Suddenly, those present saw a griffin nearby, as well as a dragon. It turns out that these two monsters attacked simultaneously. Of course, people sensed danger and tried to run away, but the creatures easily killed them with their own powers. The old man immediately wondered if these were really Cell's creatures. Suddenly, he heard that the hero said that he dared to touch Adelia. Apparently, the hour of his death had come. Now the man could see with his own eyes that it really was Sal. The hero came closer to him and leaned his weapon, then asked him to tell them why they needed the girl. The interlocutor noted that it was necessary for the ritual. It was important to check the functionality to make sure that Master Alan would receive his talent, so they wanted to find such a person and check everything. The hero immediately became wary. At that moment, he thought that it meant that Adelia was in danger because of him. Soon he said that he could really let this old man go. However, everything is not so simple, and at that moment he was born into his own hand. The butler realized that blood magic was about to be used on him. Sal ordered him to return back to Madame Cooper and tell her that the ritual was a success. Now she can use it on him. And if she doesn't, she'll find out what will happen. The interlocutor asked why he needed it. The guy looked at him bloodthirstily and said that this was necessary in order to reveal who Alan really was. The butler returned and said, "Madam, that everything went well." The woman asked if it really did. In response, I heard everything. However, the next full moon is the celebration of the young master's coming of age, and they will be able to do this. Hera happily said that he was a good boy and thought that her long-standing dream would come true. Her mother would take care of her son and make sure that he would become the new head of the family without any problems. Alan was just pestering Gloria and said that she was playing hard to get, but it's a pity that he already realized this. At that moment, he was glad that his mother arranged the meeting. Suddenly, his own thoughts were interrupted by a girl who pointed a gun at him and asked what kind of touchy-feely person was speaking. It was unclear how such a fool could be her fiancé. The guy was horrified and wondered if this girl had really gone crazy. Gloria swung her weapon and said that you first remove the contractions, and the boy asked her to stop. And then, out of nowhere, the main characters appeared and crossed their weapons with her. Then he smiled and asked the gentleman if everything was okay with him, since he had come to save him. Alan, getting angry, said why he thought he needed saving. In all, he didn't take his sword for a walk. He couldn't understand how this scoundrel dared to mock him. The girl just asked Sal where he was from. Well, in any case, this is wonderful and we should go and have a duel. The hero, in response to this, tried to get away from this topic. Alan entered into horror. Thinking that she had really fallen in love with him, Gloria became embarrassed and said that not everyone is given the opportunity to fight with her. Let him think carefully. The gentleman became angry and wanted to shout at them for behaving like that with each other. But suddenly his mother interrupted him and asked him to come to her. So the boy decided that he would deal with this woman after the wedding. Therefore, he said that the lady did not wish to honor him with her presence, and he would leave her. The girl said that now that no one was in the way, if he refused her, she would attack. The guy agreed and noticed that there was a request before that. He said he would very much like to meet her older brother, Duke Isaac. So after a short period of time they met, Sal said that he had a plan to break the marriage contract between Gloria and Alan. But for this, he would need their help, and let them lend him a family heirloom, the Box of Illusions. The hero knew that this man was unhappy with Alan and the alliance with the Cooper family. He has tried to break their contract together many times, but the royal family has rejected the requests, so now the guy can take advantage of this chance. The man quickly wounded him with his weapon and said that he, a confessing boy, did not understand how he could break the royal contract and ask him for a favor. Sal noted that they needed him because he could solve all their problems. Hugh was surprised when he saw his blade and wondered if there really was an S-level talent in the family. At the same time, the heroes, without stopping, rushed into the attack, saying that since they cannot break the marriage contract, perhaps they should get rid of the insignificant young gentleman. Now he was interested in what the Duke himself thought about this. A month passed after these events, and everyone was preparing for the ritual. The butler said that everything was ready. The only thing that was wrong was the absence of Sal himself. Hera noted that she understood everything, and now he could be free. The bastards of the family were not discussed far away. Then they were nicknamed, really, to tarnish. They said with regret that only Alan could lead their family. The subordinate told the master that all the guests were already in place and, as per their instructions, the king had a table so that he would not have to wait. Hugh had just greeted Duke Cooper and asked if he wanted to chat for a bit. The man was surprised when he saw it, and his tongue said he hadn't invited him. The interlocutor noted that after all, this is a coming-of-age celebration, and he also wants to join the feast. The hero was nearby and said that it was time to activate the box. The subordinate noticed that he understood everything and immediately disappeared from that place, fulfilling the plan. The shadows pointed their weapons and powers at the box and asked it to open the gates of the abyss and pull the illusion out of the shadows. After these manipulations, the box should finally open in a moment. In the end, everything went according to plan and the estate was shrouded in the very illusion that the hero needed. While he was standing and looking at this, he heard a voice from the side that said that he had found it. It turned out that it was Alan who noticed why the guy was hiding here all alone. Did he really want to hide? Cold air came from the dungeon, and dark magic also seeped in. There was the main character who was already tied up, and Alan was holding a weapon right in front of him. After that, he rushed into the attack and said that now this guy's talent would belong to him. So Sal was killed within moments, with only blood flowing from his wounds. Then Adelia appeared and saw this picture and was very scared. But soon the girl came to her senses, and it turned out that she was in a warehouse. Her interlocutor told her to stop dozing and get up to work. The hero's girlfriend saw that it was the power of the stars. So it was not a dream, but a vision from a past life. The power of the stars is a gift that can be opened by time mages. Wizards who possess it are able to use the power to see fragments of the past or the future. Adelia realized that he was in danger and rushed towards him. She knew perfectly well that she had to stop Alan before he got to him, and suddenly he showed up himself. The girl noticed Alan handing the glass to Sal and saying that his father had asked him to pass it on. So I realized that everything was bad, and the advice of calm and the power of the stars was used to put him to sleep so that Alan would fall asleep for a few months. But suddenly she heard someone speaking to her and looked there. It turned out that it was Hera who wanted to stop her, so she ordered her subordinate to do it, and he immediately rushed to her. When the boy grabbed her, he began to hold her so that she could not say a word. The woman thought, "Didn't Doug say that the experiment was a success? It's not clear why she is still able to use magic. Although in any case, now is not the time to think about it, and you need to focus on performing the ritual." Sal in turn took the glasses that were offered to him and began to drink the liquid. A few moments later, he immediately fell to the ground, will be consciousness. Alan said that he was an idiot because he managed to fall for the same trick twice. Soon the guy really found himself tied up in the basement, and the gentleman was beating him, also asking where he got his S-level talent from. It was also unclear how he was able to defeat the demonic dragon with his own strength. On top of all this, his beloved Calorie could also fall in love with him. All this should have belonged only to Alan, and not to this bastard at all. Hera asked him to stop, because he had already stopped venting his anger and let him get down to business. The son agreed, and Doug presented him with a dagger, saying that this dagger was created specifically so that it could pierce his indestructible body. The gentleman took it and said what a pity that this guy's talent would now belong to him. Without a second's hesitation, he immediately pierced the protagonist's heart and tried to kill him. Smiling madly, Alan screamed to beg him for mercy, because he would still be the only worthy heir of the Cooper family. There will also be the best talent of all, and with great strength and an impenetrable body, no one will come along. After just a few moments, it turned out that the main characters were alive and began to laugh loudly, saying that the performance was a success. Alan, as well as his mother, were simply dismayed when they saw that Sal was actually alive. The boy easily freed himself from the chains and told him to open his eyes and see whose destiny was really going downhill. At that moment, the hero dispelled the illusion that had been cast on this estate, and they found themselves in the banquet hall. Alan and Kurova were amazed that they were actually in this place where there were a lot of people. Those present began to say that they were madmen, because they did such things in front of people, which meant that this was what the gentleman really was, and all the rumors turned out to be true. Hera was shocked because she did not understand how the boy knew about this plan. The test of the ritual probably failed, but when everything went wrong was not clear. Alan tried to explain that everything was wrong and that he had been set up, but everything was clear to everyone. Hugh clapped his hands and said, "What a magnificent performance. I wonder what Duke Cooper will say about this now." The man was very angry at that moment and immediately started yelling at Alan because of this. The boy didn't know what to answer, and his mother said that she made him do it. If he wanted to punish someone, then it would be better to punish her. But the Duke did not listen to her at all and, approaching the boy, immediately hit him hard. The hero looked at what was happening and said that it was cruel. Alan rose to his knees and asked what he had done wrong, because he was a pathetic bastard, and everything should rightfully belong to him. After this statement, those present began to discuss that the Duke had earned fame for himself. But now, after these words, his reputation would be shaken. The head of the family got angry and then asked if his son really thought that way. Pointing his weapon and using his power, he told the children to listen, because today the competition for the inheritance begins. The bastards were surprised by this and began to wonder what it all really meant. But soon they realized that now they too could fight for the right to become the heir in any way. Their looks became fierce, because there were no restrictions. So first they were going to kill Alan himself. Hugh laughed and said that it was the legendary and spirit of the Cooper family and power above all else. But fortunately, it all ended, and now the contract should be broken, because he won't allow his sister to marry a man who can chatter while being a weakling. Duke Cooper realized what had just happened. It was clearly the effect of the illusion box. It was obvious that Isaac was in cahoots with this child. There were many other aristocrats gathered at the festival, and any rumor that reached the royal family from them would only harm them, so they should retreat for now. The man told Isaac not to worry because he would discuss it with His Majesty and then contact him. The interlocutor noted that he expected this wise decision. The head of the Coopers said that as far as Sal is concerned, anyone can receive the right to inherit, but one cannot defame the family name with one's actions. Therefore, if someone violates it, he disappears without a trace. The guy started laughing when she heard this and asked if he really thought he wanted to be the heir. At that moment, he touched the weapon and the man and said that if he wanted him to disappear, then he should do it now, and also called him father. The interlocutor was very surprised and thought that this guy was amazing, so it was unclear what he wanted. He immediately put the weapon away and decided that was enough. The subordinate turned to the master and asked if he really didn't want to teach him a lesson. The old man said that he didn't want to. He was a pretty strong guy, and he was interested in what he would do next. At the same time, I thought that this boy's character was clearly unpleasant, and he didn't even know who he got it from. Soon, Hera scolded Doug and asked where the leak came from. It was unclear who told about their plans. The man replied that he didn't know that either. Then the subordinate came with the captive and asked what to do with the servant. The woman responded in a rage that she had not been fed to the animals and it was unclear why they were asking. She suddenly stopped because she realized that she had clearly used her magic recently, and this could have happened either because of the failure of the experiment or for some other reason, because there is a huge probability that they didn't deprive you of anything at all. In a rage, the woman asked the old man if he really took away her talent, and then maybe he would show it to her right now. The man said that a high-level talent had not yet mastered it. Hera noticed that the excuse was already enough and ordered to finish him off. The subordinates grabbed the man, and he asked them to listen to him because it was all Sal Cooper and he forced him. But a few moments later, he was killed. The lady said that the dog betrayed its owner and he killed it. So why the extra explanation? But as for this girl, it would be better if she took her talent and found a much more suitable use for it. So she immediately picked it up and started using her power. But after a few moments, she was shocked because there were no burns on her body. If this is true, then could all this mean that she has the body of an ice moon? Girls with such a body become amplifiers when they reach adulthood. A man who becomes a partner of an amplifier will be able to increase his strength thanks to her. And in that case, this little girl could definitely be useful to her. After a while, the hero reflected that he did not think that after this, Alan would be left in a family with a combination of lack of talent. But perhaps the reason lies in the influence of his mother. Although it is unclear why he was allowed to stay in the castle, perhaps to contain him or to prevent him from running away. The woman may be worried about this. But Sal is not going to go anywhere until they cause Alan a lot of pain. Suddenly he heard a knock and thought it was Adelia, so he said to leave. But it was Gloria who noticed that she was told to return the box, she had some free time, and she decided to come and pick it up in person. The hero wondered if he would be able to enlist the support of his family, Isaac. Even if he personally killed Alan, nothing would happen. He told everyone that he thought their families were equal, but why is a box that simply creates illusions under very strict conditions a family heirloom? Gloria said if he is interested, but she won't tell yet. No one believes this legend, and all the aristocrats know, so she will use it for the deal with Sal. The guy ended up saying goodbye to her casually, and Gloria, angry, said that she wanted to fight him. So after a short period of time, we were already at the training ground. The girl rushed to attack, using her spiked sword. But the opponent easily deflected her attack with one swing of his weapon. Then he pointed a gun at her and said that she had lost again. The girl indignantly said that he had no manners. Sal turned around and noticed that she herself had asked him not to hold back. According to their agreement, she had to reveal to him the secret of the box of illusions. Gloria noticed that this was just a legend. It says that a person who has mastered the power of the stars themselves, as well as the magic of time, can use the box. This is done so that he can bring another person back to life at the cost of his own. Sal wondered if in his past life, Adelia had sacrificed her life to bring him back to this world. So now he had to take care of her, because they would allow Alan to harm her. By that time, the subordinates had hurriedly arrived and said that Mrs. Adelia had been kidnapped. The hero was very surprised when he heard it with his own ears. So he started reporting so that they would say faster who did it. The guy said that last night they prepared the box and saw how the lady was taken away by Madame Cooper's people. And Gloria also heard in the conversation of the maids that he took the girl as a maid, and when she comes of age, she will become his concubine. So she said that at first she thought they meant Sal when they talked about the young master. After receiving the information, the hero, angry, began to run from the room. The girl shouted that he was clearly not going to save someone to kill. Alan was actually angry that this bastard dared to humiliate him. But they asked him to wait a little, because he needed to wait until he came of age. The master did not listen to them at all, and therefore shouted for them to kill him. One of the guys said that this girl they're holding really likes Soul Cooper, so why don't you take it out on her? The boy said that it was a good idea. He promised the concubine that under his careful guidance, she would become a professional girl. Odolela did not understand what to do, because these chains were holding back her strength, so she could not get out, and begged Sela to save her. Alan said he wondered what she would look like during love, so she better get used to the role of a concubine as soon as possible. At the same time, the main character appeared and hit Ayn very hard in the head with his hand. The boy, who was behaving very brazenly at that moment, immediately fell to the ground. The guy decided to finish her off with his leg and shouted for him to die. Alan felt a lot of pain from this blow because he felt a sore spot. But Sal did not stop his attacks and continued to beat him with all parts of his body. So soon there were no living bones left in his opponent's hotel, as they were all broken. The hero couldn't stop, and his dark, ominous aura continued to accumulate in this place. His subordinates tried to protect the young master, but nothing worked because the hero easily defeated them with his attacks. When the guys from his squad arrived, they saw a terrible picture in front of them. Gloria helped Adelia free himself and told her to help him quickly before he turned into a demon again. At that moment, the girl hugged him and asked him to wake up, because everything was fine with her. And the people of the head of the family also successfully took away Alan, who was badly beaten. Suddenly, Hera arrived, saw her beaten son, and was simply horrified. Then she started shouting that the boy was an ungrateful bastard, and this was how he repaid his father for allowing him to stay in the castle. The hero took off his necklace and took out his weapon, and then slowly began to walk forward. Soon he found himself next to the woman with whom he had been talking. Hera asked in horror what he was doing. The guy slowly pierced his hand with the blade and blood gushed out. Then she pointed to Alan's head and said that she was challenging him to a mortal fight to the last drop of blood and thought that she could not allow a threat to Adelia's life. After some time, the day of the competition arrived, and those present were in the arena. Sal said he didn't even expect that he would actually come and not spend all those 7 days trying to escape. He asked why he should suddenly miss such an opportunity to crush him like a pathetic insect. At that moment, the hero saw his shield and thought that it gave him goosebumps. The competition began, and the jellyfish's shield began to attack him with its rays. Naturally, the main character dodged the petrifying beam, and his opponent only laughed because of this. Sal realized that a stronger saint would not help against the Medusa's shield, because petrifications do not even count as damage, so he will not be able to reflect it with an oath. In this first must destroy this weapon, Alan said. Who would have thought that he deprived Perseus of the blade and he would give the shield of Medusa? The guy didn't answer him and just rushed to attack, but his opponent said that it was all useless. When Sela was already a few meters away from him and tried to attack, Alan called the jellyfish. That's why the shield appeared near its owner and tried to attack with its beam. But this attack was not successful because the hero rushed to the shield and cut where the eyes were. Because of this, some green liquid started to flow out from behind the eyes and scattered to the sides. And the heroes at that moment were even more confident in themselves. So they rushed and said that Alan would die. A few moments later, the body was cut open, but it turned out to be just an illusion. Alan laughed about this and said that he was now a golden staff mage. Then he used his dark magic and told the innocent souls to devour him. This black magic is called the Curse of Devouring. Hugh said that he was a scoundrel, because in order to use this magic, thousands of souls of innocent people would be needed. So I turned to Brad and said that I needed an explanation, and he noted that this was their family secret, so he asked me to respect their traditions. Alan saw that the heroes were not dodging and shouted that he was an idiot, so let him enjoy the pain. Suddenly, I saw that it doesn't work. And it's unclear how it's possible because I've practiced with this ability hundreds of times. It's impossible to just break through them. Enraged, he summoned more spirits and shouted at the bastard to go to hell. So, a large number of dark souls immediately headed towards the guy. Alan didn't understand how he and the guy were not damaged. The hero noted that he had fought enough, so it was time to die. The master used shadow death and damage transfer and asked how he thought he could hit him since he was his shadow. But at that moment, a completely different guy, who was standing on the side, was wounded. Sal wondered what he had forgotten. The oath automatically transferred any damage to his shadow. The guy asked what had happened. Did they really care about the lives of these bastards? At the same time, he used the black magic staff of life. This ability absorbs the life force of another person and attacks the selected target. Alan thought, although he doesn't know why, but he managed to avoid the influence of the shadow oath. But he definitely won't be able to dodge these. He will spend souls on the staff attack. At that moment, the life force of the remaining shadows began to drop sharply, and they fell off their feet. Alan laughed and said to look at himself because he was already giving up. It's just a pity that this won't stop him, and everyone else deserved this fate. At the same time, the protagonist thrust his blade straight into the ground quite deeply. Then she used the forbidden Maya, namely the bloody information. So this dark force was spreading in the area, approaching the Alan and destroying his power. The shadows of this man had regained their life force, and they were grateful to the boss for this. At the same time, a dragon appeared in the sky and headed towards the battlefield. With his power, he immediately destroyed the dome that guarded the training camp and began to make his way inside. It was Sela's animal that stopped next to him, and then the guy told Alan to enjoy his last breath. The hero asked the dragon if he was also angry with him, but he had rejected his head. Hugh was amazed by what he saw and thought that this was the legendary dragon armor, according to whether it was possible to tame the demonic dragon. Then, a real spiritual connection is formed between the owner and him. Under the influence of emotions, and the dragon can change its form and strengthen all the abilities of the owner. Right now, in front of everyone's eyes, this is what happened. Because the hero put on armor, all this is called dragon armor. Alan was very surprised and said that it was impossible. Even if the guy received the dragon's blessing, he would never be able to reach an understanding with him. It looks like this is another illusion, and now he will dispel it with his great curse. Using dark magic and unholy souls, he was able to create a huge, terrifying creature. The hero noticed what helped them understand each other with the dragon, and also unite. It was precisely the hatred for Alan. After these words, he made an instant conclusion and immediately cut the body of the creature that was supposed to attack him. So right in front of him, there was already an opponent who defended himself only with the help of his staff. Soon the guy started screaming because his hand was cut off. The hero said one hand because he stole their universal talents. The mother began to worry a lot about her son, but her husband told her to calm down. Alan said that this guy was just a bastard, and it was unclear how he dared to do such a thing. But the hero did not listen and rushed into the attack, said that he was fighting for the shadows that died because of him, as well as those he had killed in their past lives and those from whom he had taken away their natural gifts, and also for all the evil that he has done in the past, present, and future. Sal prepared for the final blow and told the man to go straight to hell. As soon as the guy tried to finish off his opponent, something that looked like a pearl flew towards his blade. It turned out that it was Hera who came to protect her son. The leader shouted that he would open it, because this was a sacred duel, a tradition of their family. Hugh noticed her ladylike nobility when you were a great magician. He could never have imagined that he would have the honor of seeing her on the battlefield. She used a magic artifact to build the 8-circle light barrier. The rumor that she lost her magic powers when she killed the previous leader was true. She used the skill 9 circles of white magic and the holy spear. She said she knew the guy would become a monster, so she had to finish him off in childhood. The Duke used his power and immediately shouted for them to stop immediately. Within moments, his wife's equipment began to fall apart. Also, after manipulation by this force, the main character's armor was also removed from him. Isaac noticed that, as expected from the Swordsman of Silence, nothing could overpower his forbidden scream. Brad told Sal that there was no place for him in the Cooper family, that he should gather his men and leave. The guy replied that he would regret this decision. The women still asked to let him finish him off, but the man shouted at him to leave, otherwise he would regret it himself. In the end, Sal gathered his subordinates and told them that they were leaving. So they left with the Isaacs. The hero said that the gentleman was not obliged to leave with him. Hugh asked if he wanted to join their family. The guy replied that he understood that he was an outcast, and wouldn't that be a direct declaration of war on the Cooper family? The man was surprised by this, and the hero continued to say that he could not join their family, but he could offer a deal. The king is sick, and the war of the aristocrats is inevitable. If the guy gets into the Royal Academy, he will be the first to receive the latest news. Hugh noticed that he was quite calculating whether he wanted to get into the academy. And in order for him to help him, Sal thought that since he had a talent for fencing, it was time to use this trump card. Therefore, the man said he must help, as he could become a disciple of the silent holy blade Chris. The man was just drinking and thought, does anyone remember him? He is an honored master of the sword of speed. Speed. His best characteristics. The speed of the ball surpasses even the sound of its impact. The blade ends up in the enemy's body faster than he can even hear it cutting through the wind. He is carefree on the outside but cautious on the inside, and is the head of the king's personal assassins, so he only answers to him personally. Alcohol is his hobby, but he often pretends to be. A few days later, Sal asked if the others could see those 3 towers in the distance. This is the protective barrier of St. Mountain, the Holy Trinity, so the city is not far away. Hugh said that he had to warn that even outside the academy there were plenty of other aristocrats in the city, so they had to be careful. He continued his speech, and the hero thought that he could not be trusted, because they were always ready to stab him in the back if it would benefit the family. Isaac said not to worry about joining the academy. Also, Adelia will become his servant. As for the rest of the subordinates, they will be guards from thieves. Sal wondered if the thieves were really that close and this was his chance. Hugh said that dealing with them was a real lesson, but the hero shouted, leave it to him. I also noticed that if we talk about Adelia, she will now get in the way and asks Mr. Isaac to accompany her to the Royal Academy. The man sighed and said to his sister, and first we need to resettle the people, this boy. Very soon the hero found himself in the depths of the forest and was observing the right place. From the memories of her past life, Angela was supposed to have been captured by bandits when she was about 7 years old. Holy Blade. Chris is her father, and for many years he searched for his daughter and was ready to do anything to save her. So if the guy manages to free her from captivity, he will have a chance to become his student. As he approached the bandits' base, he had already put on his armor. A large group was just training and using a spear. Soon the man who was leading them noticed a shadow that was above. A large number of his soldiers were killed in a few moments. The hero used the first hereditary fencing technique, namely the bloody shadow shine. Immediately after that, he used the second hereditary fencing technique. It, in turn, was called the unbridled feast of bloody snakes. An energy in the form of those very snakes appeared from the weapon. The leader of the bandits that Sal was confronting at that moment was Plan. He got angry when he saw this madman and attacked him. Naturally, the guy noticed this attack and easily blocked the big man's blow. Next, he jumped up and used the third inherited sword technique, Blood Shadow Decapitation. The leader of the bandits noticed the demon's bloody sword and thought that he was from the Cooper family. But doesn't he know who they are? At that moment, Cell had no intention of listening to him at all, and still used his technique and cut his neck. A few moments later, his bloody clones appeared when he used the technique. They, in turn, began to attack the remaining bandits. The hero noticed that they were just a bunch of evil creatures, and he did not care who they were. After this, the guy's attention was drawn to the griffin, which turned to him. Sal asked what happened. Did he really find the place he asked him about? And if this is really so, then he says to lead him where he needs to go. Soon, the heroes touched the ledge on the wall and thereby opened the door in front of them. Without thinking for a second, he began to go down to where the girl was hidden. Angela saw him and asked if he had really come to save her. Sal said that he came with you to take her to her father and wants to become his student. I thought that earlier she said that since childhood she could see a person's intentions. So I analyzed the guy. The girl stood up and said that he wasn't lying, so let him lead. Then, the hero lifted her into his arms and began to slowly climb up. On the way, he said that he was afraid that they wouldn't just be let out of here. And he said this because a skeleton with a large skull appeared in front of them, which glowed with a green light. The guy said that this big guy was incredibly strong, so he would only be able to block one attack. And when they went forward, he would distract him and let her run as fast as she could. The hero thought that the attack of the 4-meter-tall skeleton thug was equal in strength to the blow of a swordmaster, and this one was a whole 5 meters tall. Then he told the dragon that they were putting their lives on the line and asked Angela to get ready. Of course, the girl agreed to this, and everyone prepared for the fight. Clothed in success, the guy exhaled and immediately rushed to attack the skeleton. The monster saw him and did not stay away, so he also rushed to attack. In the end, the hero only had to hold him until the girl ran out. Angela started to run away, and the village's defenses were fading away at that moment. Smiling in a difficult situation, the guy said that the dragon armor had another ability and it was time to test its powers. Therefore, he immediately ordered to remove the armor. Removing the dragon armor contributes to the release of accumulated magical forces and creates a wave of incredible power. It is precisely this that is capable of stunning the enemy and saving a person's life. Sal said that a simple skeleton will not become an obstacle in his path. Now all he had to do was take the girl and leave here together. But the skeleton also noticed how Angela was running away and aimed his magic ball at her, which he released from his mouth. So, a few moments later, a powerful explosion thundered in the place where the man had been recently. The guy was very worried about her, but after a few moments he saw that the griffin had saved her. However, very soon he did not have enough strength to hold the big girl, and she began to fall down. And Sal jumped towards her and grabbed her in his arms in order to save her. He then stated that this was a closed magical formation, and in order to avoid it, its core had to be destroyed. But for now, this thing is following them, so they can't find it calmly. The girl noticed that if he was talking about the core, could she be in a place where no one was allowed? The guy noticed that she could. Did she really know such a place? Angela added that when she was released from prison, there were 3 places where it was forbidden to go. One of them was nearby, so she should go there. Sal said that the skeleton, although strong at a rather slow speed, is capable of throwing equally powerful magic projectiles at long range. And the guy now has no armor, so even one shell can seriously injure him. Arriving at the mysterious place, the hero noticed that this room was clearly reinforced, but it would not last long. At the same time, the girl looked at the weapon, namely the bow, and said that it was calling her. Soul said that if that is the case, then they should look into it. When they got closer to the center, the magical power began to spread to the girl. The hero asked if this was the blessing of the sylphs. The interlocutor answered everything correctly. That big monster will be here soon and we should go to the next place. They need a mysterious place located on the other side. Very soon, they arrived there and saw a dark magic ball in the center. Sal was horrified when he saw it and wondered if this was what he thought it was. It turns out that the wizard who created this skeletal bully ordered him to self-destruct. The guy told Angela that the next trick could drive him crazy, and if that happens, then he should save himself. The girl replied that everything is fine, and she believes in him. Cell touched the weapon of delirium and thought that he should use the 4th hereditary fencing technique. A few moments later, he rushed towards the skeleton inside and used the bloodbath skill. So the core was hit by several dozen blows and began to split. At the same time, the spirit of the weapon grabbed the guy and said that now he belongs to him. Chris was just in the capital of St. Gore at the Royal Academy. A subordinate came to his master and said that the second prince's soldiers had left the city, so he asked if he needed to send fighters after them. The man asked if Sanders had really gone out of town. If this is the case, then you need to keep an eye on his wine, and he will definitely come back for it after he checks everything personally. The mysterious masked guy smiled and said, "Finally, the gentleman is free," looking at the bottle. Around this same time, the main character was going crazy in the bandit camp. In fact, he had almost turned into a demon and was out of control, so he attacked everyone around him. The griffin tried to save the girl, but he couldn't hold her for long, so she ended up on the ground. The dragon also realized that the situation was bad and tried to protect the guy from it with the help of his power. Sal, with his mad obsession, noticed this attack and turned his attention to it. And the griffin quietly crept closer, trying to protect the girl with all his might. She looked at him carefully and then thought about what the guy had said. She needed to survive by any means necessary, and she thought that she shouldn't be afraid because everything would definitely be okay. So I used the bow that I had recently received and fired towards Sal. Naturally, the hero noticed this attack and, using his reflections, protected the forest from it. So the creatures that were under his control had to guard Angela again. The obsessed guy laughed and asked what kind of lovely young apple it was. I wonder what part of it he should try first. The girl was terrified and realized that she couldn't even move. The hero picked her up and said that this blood was so pure, he wanted to open her chest and let it sprinkle his body. Angela, with tears in her eyes, told her brother not to be upset. He did everything he could. Her tears touched the guy's consciousness, which was sleeping somewhere in the depths of his soul. So he woke up and told the blood demon not to dare go that far. The creature noted that this was impossible because he could not awaken on his own. Enough of resisting already because he cannot stop the inevitable, because his will obeys him. Sal came to and said that it was true, but he would only have to do one thing. Then he used the bloodsucker, and the demon said that he would destroy himself. Even if he survived, he would never become a swordsman again. The guy asked not to worry, because Chris would soon help him solve this problem, and he was already finished. Suddenly, a killer from Sanders' squad appeared. He noticed this boy who had brought so much trouble to His Majesty. Then he rushed into the attack and shouted for him to die immediately. But in order to protect the main character, Angela stood up with her own body and asked him not to dare to harm. The killer felt that something had happened to his hand, and the weapon was also destroyed. As the body continued to be destroyed, Chris said that Angela had been through so much suffering, and he apologized. Now let her come to him, and they would go home. But the little girl asked, "What about her brother? After all, she can't leave him here." The man approached him and said that he could help him with the treatment of his wounds if he wished. Sal replied that he wanted much more, because he risked everything to save Angela and become his heir. Chris said that in the end he saved her with his own hands. The guy noticed his recklessness and led to minor complications. But in the end, he managed to snatch the girl from the prince's hands. 7 days later, they were together at the academy. The man announced that he would become his next heir. The hero realized that he was now the #1 enemy of the academy. The mentor said that he could refuse the future title and teacher at any moment. Everyone was discussing it. And Sal said that he wanted to achieve much more, and nothing would stop him. And as soon as he said these words, a huge sword appeared before him. This is William, an ordinary student, and he won first place in a fighting competition. He said that the guy is a killer of his fellow men, so he challenges him to a duel. Sal realized that even all the other surrounding enemies couldn't suppress such a bloodthirsty aura. So this was the plan to take advantage of William's sense of justice. The opponent said that if he dared to refuse duels, then he should simply leave Master Chris and renounce the title of his heir. The hero thought that this guy's past life was also used, so he took out a weapon and accepted William's challenge. But if he loses, then let him swear allegiance to him until death. All those present were rooting for their comrade and told him to show him the Imperial Academy and that they could do better than the best. Therefore, their participant had no choice but to fight, so he immediately rushed into battle. The opponent used the Imperial swordsmanship, namely the dash cut, but the other one used the blood demon swordsmanship technique, the blood cut. So he got behind this man and told him to just give up because he was no match for him. But William used the chi burst skill, and then the hero realized that it was bad because he interrupted his attack and he would only be able to use it in 10 seconds. The guy turned around in the air for a few seconds and rushed forward. Fortunately, Sel managed to return, but he realized that this was the most powerful technique. Could he really have learned it while still at the academy? The opponent continued his onslaught and told the guy to just give up, and also let him just repent of his deception, and then nothing will happen. Sal smiled and said that blood magic was very different from other schools of magic. In his current state, the maximum would be the second technique at the level of a master of the silver sword. Chris said that if he used the third technique, he could become a demon. The hero mentally apologized, but for the sake of recognition and loyalty to William, He was ready to take the risk. And the knight said that it was all over and used slashing, but the guy managed to return. And when he was in the air, he used the Blood Demon Thousand Blood Blades technique. So in reality, this weapon began to gradually approach the opponent. William asked if fencing could do that, and Sal remarked that he was pleased to see that funny expression on his face again. Suddenly, his consciousness became clouded again, and that same bloody demon appeared. He started laughing madly, and the opponent realized that something was wrong with this man's sauna. Of course, those present immediately became alert and began to take up a fighting stance. The wizards used the power and thought that this villain was using the ban on her techniques. With such demonic power, how many innocents has this guy killed? He needs to be destroyed immediately. This also concerns William. Is he really going to sacrifice his life, the guy said. Having lost the duel, he swore allegiance to death itself. So even if he is a bad person, he will protect him to the end. Suddenly someone came to them. It was Master Chris who knocked Sal out with one blow and said that she was as old as he was in his youth. Imperial Academy students shouldn't be so mean as to duel a wounded man, but he assures that once the boy recovers, they will have as many battles as they want. The students said they were afraid, as if he was ready to kill them at any moment. The second heir of the Shavat Moran family asked His Highness what they should do. Sandro Richard, the second prince of the empire, said he heard that he got in on the recommendation of a nobleman. So I should go to the main hall. Then I wondered if he really used blood magic. And this is a great school for killing yourself. Adelia told the teacher that she would like to help Sal. Cassadine asked. Not to be stupid because he is a blood mage, the girl noticed. Didn't he say that magic school doesn't affect? The teacher noted that although the person's character was not related to the school of magic, his magic was terrible and completely different from ordinary blood magic. Chris told Sal that if he wanted to master this art through blood magic, he had to be in perfect condition, both physically and mentally. The man worked tirelessly for 7 days to help his body recover. He will teach him how to use the power of his own blood instead of Kai to strengthen his own body and use blood swordsmanship. And he thanked him by getting into a fight without recovering. But if he really wants to destroy himself, then who will repay the Coopers? The boy said that he was not stupid enough to do this. And besides, he trusted his teacher and knew that he would not allow his student heir to go crazy. Suddenly, the dean of the academy's combat department, George Brandon, appeared. Chris asked what he was doing here because he was not welcome. The man noted that he was actually outside the door. He said that Sal is a recommended student of the academy. According to the rules, he has 1 week to complete the test to confirm that he is worthy of training. And Chris should not allow his whims to interfere with the work of the academy. The rector may and will tolerate this. But he will not, the hero asked the teacher if there were any problems. Chris noticed that this was true. It was just a stubborn old man. As long as the guy didn't break the rules, don't worry too much. Then the hero realized that he should complete the tests as soon as possible. That night, Richard told old George that as a test, he had prepared a dungeon for them for another Sal, and had instructed his subordinate to poison the water in it before Cooper arrived. He will become so mad that Chris will have no choice but to kill him. The next day, the hero told William that they would talk after receiving the task. The subordinate replied that his next test would be too difficult. Sal said that he knows that special ones are making the task more difficult for him. The guy didn't answer that it wasn't about that. The situation at the academy is quite complicated now. This is because everyone was gathered in the main hall and waiting for his arrival. There was Philip, the student on duty, and George's student. Adelia was also present. The hero went to the registration desk and said that he wanted to take part in the trial test. He was asked to give his name and faculty, and he did so. Philip apologized and said that his dungeons would undergo changes. Its difficulty would be increased to extreme and would require a minimum of 4 people. William was indignant, but in response he heard that the tests for singles would only be ready by next week. But the tests had to be completed within 3 days. Turning to Sal, she asked if he wanted to try to find people for his group, or if he would calmly leave their academy safe and sound. Many were outraged at that moment, and Sal said that he only thought that he wouldn't be able to find a team for himself. Philip replied that he didn't care, and the others didn't want to join his team. And even more so, they want to become his lapdogs like William. The hero insisted on him weapons. He said that if he could find a teammate, he would kneel down and ask William for forgiveness for such an insult. George's assistant replied that he shouldn't dream, because if he wanted him to bow down before him, he would have to kill him. Sal replied that he would simply tell the truth to teacher Chris. Philip continued to insist that he gather the team before the evening, but the hero replied that there was no need to do so. Then Gloria, Adelia, and William happened, the hero told Mr. Cross-eyed to register their team. And after that, let him be so kind and get down on his knees and ask for forgiveness. He wanted to complicate his life. And are you ready to risk yours for this on vacation? Philip was angry, And the student said that he was just following the rules, and this guy was taking advantage of Mr. Chris's good name. William said there was no need to go that far. The boy asked him to remember. As long as they didn't make mistakes, no one could stand in their way. Philip told the teacher that he wanted to finish him off. George told him not to forget about decency and the rules of the academy. Everything he experienced today was fuel for his strength. And very soon, the main character's group was heading to Melissa's jungle. William said that according to legend, the legacy of a powerful sorceress is hidden here. However, the academy has owned this dungeon for several hundred years, but none of the students could find the legacy. The exit is the lake. The foot of the mountain is a dangerous place, where monsters of a nightmare level live. But near the top, it is quite the opposite. Low-level monsters are found. The fog is poisonous, and the master of the golden ball will be able to hold out for about 10 hours, while the one dependent on the indicator of his own war will be able to hold out in battle for only 6 hours. Suddenly, the hero said to get ready because someone was approaching them. It was a group of students who were running away from the bugs and asking for help. William said that this swarm is not very tenacious, but killing it will not help, so it is better to wait until they leave. The unknown girl replied that it was useless. They had been running for 20 minutes already and had changed direction several times. At the same time, Adelia used her power and a shield appeared near her team. William said it was a cat's purr, but it was unclear what kind of spell it was. Sal said that these people ran for 20 minutes and didn't even have the courage to take up a sword. And yet they dare to call themselves talented warriors. And at that moment, he used a technique called the blood snake. His power struck the beetles within moments. So they all fell lifeless to the ground, the guy asked. Don't they get stronger? Then what kind of vile and useless monster is this? The second squad was glad that they were finally saved. The hero asked if they weren't ashamed that their rival saved them. The girl called him a savage because, as at least one nobleman, you can consider him as a pitiful bastard as your rival. If he had had enough brains to offer them an escort to the exit, then maybe she would have offered him to become her servant. Suddenly, she became very scared of the sounds and asked what it was. The swarm must have attracted the attention of other monsters. Everyone should be careful with these monsters. It's not that easy. As soon as the guy said this, a huge monster appeared, similar to a bear. Sal said, with a smile on his face, that none of this mattered, and that they would not just kill them all. Blood sword art is a special style that is more based on the use of blood magic and has been passed down in the Cooper family from generation to generation. Because this style uses magical power instead of physical movement during combat, it becomes very abrupt and unpredictable, making it impossible to resist. On the beast, the hero used the skill bone spikes, namely slaughter, to become stronger as a warrior. During physical training, you only need one thing, and that is to kill. The hero needs to carefully control his blood and also use it. And after that, absorb and improve your blood. And that's what blood magic is all about. A simple blood mage cannot develop his abilities so quickly in battle due to his fragile body, but a blood swordsman is not limited by this. The strength of the spilled blood is not important, because every drop will only make the owner of this style stronger. The only problem with this style is that all the anger and hatred that accumulated in the collected blood does not disappear, but rather merges. This is the image of the immortal demon within the warrior himself. This is an eternal, unbreakable curse that only a truly outstanding soul can suppress. Adelia asked after using if everything was okay with him. The hero asked not to worry. Thanks to the teachings of his teacher, even high-level monsters are not a problem. Therefore, in order to hit the creatures, he used the skill and used the storm as well as the whirlwind of arrows. To prevent her allies from being injured, the mage used a star shield. Gloria asked if it was happening to him that he couldn't be a dragon. The interlocutor answered that it wasn't so, because the sensations were completely different. Another noted that anyone who uses blood magic is doomed to lose their minds. The first and second Coopers went crazy because of this magic, and the same is said about the current head. The mage used starlight to bind them. The girl replied that using such a spell by our madman was extremely dangerous. After a while, the alley moved into another consciousness and was amazed. It was Sal's inner world. There was a bloody demon behind her who said that it turns out that there are still people willing to risk their lives for salvation. The heroine asked what he did to the guy. The monster replied that he had done nothing. The boy had chosen this path himself. The forefather of the Cooper family, who had created it, had just died from this thing. The creature asked about a deal. He would tell her how to save him, and in exchange she would allow him to plant the blood demon seed in her heart. Adelia replied that she agreed. The demon began to laugh and asked why good people were always so stupid. At that moment, the girl only thought that she would save the guy at any cost. The starlight was supposed to cleanse it, and this was the Starstream technique. The aristocrat said that she was already able to use a 7th level spell at a young age. How much time she spent on books is very interesting. Gloria turned to the lady and said she could either come here and help them or shut her mouth. The hero was just trying to deal with the demon that was trying to control his body. Bloody Friend laughed and said that he was saved by a little girl again. And what a loser he was. If he hadn't promised that girl to save him, he wouldn't have even thought of appearing in such a dirty place. Right now, he will only show it to him once, so let him remember it well. The guy, in turn, needs to learn to understand the blood that he has absorbed, to find out which flow is solving his control over himself and to get rid of it. If he lets that scum take over his body again, he'll kill that girl he likes. When saying goodbye, he said that they would meet again very soon. The hero responded by stating that next time he would regret their meeting. And immediately after these words, he used a skill called Feather Snakes and struck all the creatures with one blow. Immediately after this action, the blood of all the affected enemies immediately began to rise to the crystal. At the highest point of the mountain, a bright beam appeared. The aristocrat said, "Dungeon." A demigod-level master arrived, which means the academy learned that they were in trouble and sent a teacher. Sal asked why they disturbed a master of such a level. Did something serious happen anyway? It didn't matter. After all, he had to finish the tests. High monsters gathered at the highest point in huge numbers and a man arrived there. And after a few moments they were amazed. The man said that this bunch of animals, who do not even know what they are doing, all that remains is to return with the bastard's head. Then His Highness Sandra will be indebted to him. The man's name is Oliver, and he is a master of fencing. He thought that with the help of this artifact specially developed by the Faculty of Magic for detecting blood, he could easily find the boy and finish him off. Suddenly he heard William being asked if he knew why the demigod level existed. Was it really just made up to sound pompous? Oliver saw the squad and wondered if he had saved these guys on the way here, unless the other students couldn't deal with him directly. The students saw him and happily asked if he had come here to pick them up, and they were already grateful. The teacher thought that there was nothing to be done, because everyone loved him. Get rid of the villain who was the culprit of the anomaly and the dungeon, then they would thank him for it. At that moment, the main character saw that the opponent had taken out his weapon and was attacking. The sword immediately cut into his body, and eventually a pool of blood appeared there. Oliver said that this child should be happy that he deserved to die from him. Sal noted that means that the level of a demigod is the level of a master of the golden sword. All of them from the academy are like this. It sounds loud, but in fact it's a trifle. The man was surprised that he didn't die. And this is the ability of my blood. So the hero thought of the image of a bloody demon, taught him to find any poison in the bloodstream. Now he used something else instead of the toxin stream. Therefore, he showed her movement throughout the body, and this contributed to the movement of the guy sees how the force flows through his body, and thus can predict the movement. If he can fully master this technique, then in the future, he will even be able to copy the movements and techniques of other people. At that moment, the mage from the squad used a cat's purr to create a barrier. But William rushed to attack using Imperial Slash, so the teacher only defended himself. He realized that this guy was really hard to kill, and William was fighting with all his might, so it looked like he would have to take advantage of that. The man used his combat technique and predicted the space using the flow. And then he moved from the place where he had just been. As a result, a huge monster appeared that had large and long heads. Oliver thought the students would be grateful that he had given them such an unusual experience. They tried to fight off the monsters and said that he wanted to kill them, although it was strange. But he used a scroll and avoided teleportation. One of the guys was feeling and saying that he didn't want to die. He wanted to earn some more money, become successful, and start a family. The other student also cried, but he knew he had to fight with all his might. But the monsters, when they saw their victims, immediately rushed to attack and wanted to tear them into small pieces. The hero told his comrade to block the monsters' attacks, and he agreed. But Adelia Gloria was ordered to protect these losers because they were their witnesses. The sorceress used her barrier. Duchess Isaac said that her mind would become more powerful if she stopped giving her such names. The hero asked to give him the crystal because they would die and still fail the tests. He understood that this was a monster of catastrophic level. I'm sure if he uses the Shadow Blood Blade technique, the demon will be able to take control of his body, but what if he only uses skills below silver? In the end, he told William to divert his attention to himself, because the guy needed a little time. The subordinate immediately rushed to attack and blocked the attack of the huge monster. But the creature's strength turned out to be so great that it was easily thrown back several tens of meters. The monster eventually rushed at Sal, who was very close. To protect him, William appeared again, using Imperial swordsmanship and the tearing skill. During the battle, he asked how much time the hero needed to collect blood. Several powerful attacks were flying towards him, and he said that there were a couple of seconds left. To protect him from these, Gloria arrived and used the Dance of Blades. But suddenly something happened to her, and so she immediately fell to the ground. Luckily for her, the main character used his blood magic and managed to catch her. He was already fully prepared for battle and told the monster that he had come to his death. Therefore, he immediately rushed into the attack and used the Blood Flame Snake Strike skill. Really huge heads. Monsters of catastrophic level were cut up by this. When Sal saw what happened, he wondered if he was finally dead. After the addition, the hero gradually began to approach his comrades in arms. Suddenly, one of the knights stood up even though they were also wounded. He began to say that Sal was a demon who used blood magic, and also a bastard who betrayed his family and villains who were ready to kill their comrades. After these words, he screamed loudly and immediately plunged his sword into the ground. Then he called him his classmate and said that if it weren't for his help, he would already be dead. So he asked him to accept his sincere apologies and forgive his past stupidity. All the other students also knelt down and asked to accept their apologies and gratitude. Suddenly, the girl interrupted them and told them to look at what was there. A huge swarm of vicious insects appeared in the sky and headed towards them. Sal used his blood vision skill because he understood that there was clearly some secret behind this swarm. He soon used Crimson Flash and told Adelia to protect herself and these people, so let her take care of them. The hero headed towards the water, which was directly under the swarm, and began to dive down. It was clear to him, because this was nothing more than a simple tool for collecting life forces. Their real purpose is the resurrection of the sorceress Melissa. Black magic again. And that scoundrel is ready to take everything from others, just to survive. So I used the blood demon and told him to feast. Eventually, this life force that was taken away from the students began to return back. On top of all this, a door opened there, which was the gate from the dungeon. The hero thought that he had never even dreamed that he would find a way out. Oliver understood that all this had to remain a secret, because otherwise not only His Highness's plan to unite the Academy would suffer, but he himself as well. The portal to the dungeon opened, but who managed to survive? This time the man has no right to make a mistake, and he will not leave anyone alive. The rest of the students rejoiced that the gates were opening, and they would soon be able to get out of here. Adelia asked if Sal was okay. He said that everything was fine and his powers were restored, both physical and magical. He also found a couple of things at the bottom of the lake. The girl said that the bottle smelled like poison. It is not often that you see bottles made of crystals, and when she returns to the academy, she will ask the teacher about it. William noticed that, judging by the size, it was a catastrophic level magic crystal. It was a pity that they had to waste the past, and they could no longer be in the icy fog. When Charlie came up and told them to take this crystal that he managed to collect during his own test, the others told him to take their crystals too. And finally, Sal was accepted, and it was great. Soon his students were heading towards the gates that opened nearby. Suddenly Oliver appeared, asking why they couldn't die in the dungeon. He instantly attacked the protagonist, who took advantage of the bloody flash. The girls from the squad were worried about him and said that they were going to help. Sal used his blood vision and told Oliver that he would definitely finish him off this time. The teacher rushed to him and said that he was poisonous and a scoundrel. Then they collided with each other to kill him. And after that, the man and the boy deviated from each other. When the hero landed, a vial containing poison fell out of his hand. A few moments later, the dean appeared and ordered everyone to stop immediately. Then she asked what Oliver was doing. I thought he was a brainless idiot. Breaking the rules to fulfill the mission of the second prince of the lives of a bunch of students was worth nothing. The man said that he came here to eliminate the person in the dungeon who poisoned them. Everyone was surprised, and the girl asked if there was any evidence. In response, George showed a scroll created personally by the rector of the academy. It detects the smell of poison, and if there is someone among them who has used the poison, the scroll will find him. So the magic beam quickly headed towards the bottle of poison. The students wondered if it was Sal, but he saved them. And discord and distrust of the main character arose again because he poisoned them. George thought what a bunch of pathetic scum they were. How easy it was to deceive them. What could be taken from those who were destined to be simple pawns? Then he asked the hero if he had anything to say. He replied that if they themselves want to accuse a person of something, then a reason will always be found. Then he grabbed the river and noticed that if he thought the guy would give up, then it was a dream. George realized that he was fast, and this was his sword power. So he grabbed the weapon and said that according to the rule, the teacher can kill anyone who attacked him within the walls of the academy. But now, Chris's student will take punishment. Suddenly, his blade was affected by some other force that appeared from outside. Several men entered the portal, and one of them told George to wait, as it was not yet time for the execution. The teacher told the principal to look at this magic scroll, and he found a trace of corruption on seal. The man used a secret identification technique. It was the secret royal poison. So he said that all this does not prove anything, and first they should put them in prison and then begin an investigation. Better lock them up for now, otherwise this guy will be subject to an unstoppable stream of assassination attempts. The director said that they should go back because there was no need for the students to waste time on such trifles. The students had another discussion and they didn't understand whether Sal had poisoned herself or not. Some said he was guilty and some said he wasn't. Soon, the main character and Chris were in the dungeon. The master said that this poison is a special weapon of the royal family against blood mages. According to what he managed to find out, Prince Sandro got him. The hero shouted that he would not leave him alone and would kill him. The teacher told him to stay here and think about the fact that in this world, no matter how many enemies he killed, there would not be fewer of them. Oliver noticed that he was stupid. After all, Chris's job is to protect the royal family. The hero replied that he still didn't understand anything. He would work it out with his prince. The interlocutor noted that it was a great honor for him to contribute to His Highness's plan. The main character immediately remembered his past life and thought that this was absolute devotion. Then asked me if the man ever thought about whether he was worth it. He spends his energy on satisfying someone else, or he himself wants to be treated as a consumable whose life can be sold at any moment. Doesn't he care about anything else? If he confesses to Headmaster Albus that he made the dungeon, then the boy can help him get rid of the prince's influence. Oliver screamed to cover up. Did she really want to make him the same rabid beast that betrayed the family? Sal replied that he couldn't wait to see what they would do to him. After some time, someone came to this man. He said that His Highness had arranged a duel between him and Sal in the Colosseum, and this was his last chance. This precious bottle of life vine will give him a glorious end. The man replied that he would carry out the order, His Highness, at the cost of his life. The interlocutor said, well, that she understands this and appreciates him, Oliver noted. After accepting the vine of life, he will die. So what good will fame do him after death? In the end, it was unclear whether fame really was that important and whether it was worth sacrificing one's own life for it. Very soon, the time came when the battle was to take place in the Imperial Colosseum. The main character and his opponent were already preparing for the next fight. It was announced that today's duel would be held according to the good old customs. Two warriors would clash with each other under the attack of a beast. Whether it is killing your opponent or defeating a great beast together, the brave men who remain alive will receive a reward and congratulations from His Highness. Oliver rushed to the attack and said, I saw how he wielded his bloody weapon. If the affected area was large enough, that luxury of turning into blood would not help him. After that, they collided with each other and the opponent was thrown back. Sal asked if he had any idea how strong a swordsman with S-class talent who had trained hard since he was 4 years old was. After that, he rushed to attack, but the beast was also behind him and tried to do the same. The hero used the silent blade, namely the roar, and decided that when he was fully restored, he could do it. The prince did not understand why Oliver had not used the potion yet, and then said that someone should bring grace here. Oliver's mother, as well as the second prince's cook, had arrived at that moment. The guy saw his own mother and realized that if he lost, they would do something to her. That's why I used that bottle, because I understood that I had the right to lose. His strength began to grow rapidly, and he seemed to be going crazy. The monsters attacked him, but the teacher rushed to attack and asked him to die for his mother. He quietly asked to save his mother from the hands of the second prince, and in exchange he would help him finish off the beast. The hero asked what he was going to do. In response, Oliver threw it away and said that only if he died would Mom be able to see tomorrow. The guy's body was quickly approaching the monster that was trying to attack. The opponent walked towards him and said that he was using the mining technique on their flaming blade. So very soon the creature, namely the monster, was struck by this attack. The mother was very afraid for her son, and the prince noted that this was a stupid waste of time and effort because he could not even cope with a small thing. Oliver hoped that his death would calm the anger. His Highness and Sal would see that he had paid for his sins and also save his mother. Very soon, the core of hellish life was used. Oliver begged to save his mother, and the hero asked if he really worked for the second prince for her sake. If he dies, the guy won't help him save anyone. So right now, let him take care of his family himself. The hero pierced him with a blade and used the blood magic of the rebirth of blood and flesh. The blood of the hellish vine can neutralize the negative effects of the vine of life. Do not chatter and restore strength, because calm Chris will come for him. The prince said that he didn't even think that blood magic was so strong. He was able to defeat the beast and the demigod swordsman at the same time. So he expressed his congratulations, and now the winner can ask him for a reward, that he will choose wealth or will beg for forgiveness for the committed crime. Pointing to the woman next to him, the hero said that he only needed her. The prince stated that he probably wanted to take revenge on Oliver's family. Of course, it can be said that Sal is indeed a real blood mage. Greed, bloodlust, and the desire to kill have completely consumed his soul, so it can join him, because it will become his faithful sharp blade. The hero asked if his attitude towards his servants was so fickle. Oliver gave his life for him and died while carrying out the order, after which his family immediately kicked him out into the cold. His Highness stated that he was sorry he was dead. Sal asked what if he didn't want to join him. This is what I heard. If this is true, then blood mages are persecuted in their empire. Only those with power can protect him. Let him join or he will be expelled. The subordinate rushed to attack the guy and asked how he dared to refuse His Majesty's order. The hero easily defended himself from this attack with one hand. Soon they shouted that there was a murderer here and that His Majesty must be protected at any cost. Oliver returned to his mother, and she was glad to see him. The prince did not understand how this coward could be betrayed or was still alive. Let him go to hell. The hero hit one of the knights and said that only he would go here. Immediately after that, he continued his battle and used blood flash. So after a few moments the weapon was near the prince, Sal said, "As he can see, his life is now useless and power too." The prince turned to Chris and said that, as the head of the royal guard, he is also the supreme assassin of the royal family. So is he also a traitor? The man rushed forward and killed one of the knights who was nearby. Then he hid his weapon and declared that in the presence of His Majesty alone, he had in his hands 3 vials of the royal poison that had been found in the dungeon of Melissa. As the head of the royal guard, he had to find out where they came from. He thought it was good that Sal saved his daughter, otherwise he could have been manipulated. The prince realized that if the investigation continued, they would get to him and put him under house arrest. Soon, there would be a meeting for the exchange of new students of the academy. The older brother definitely takes this opportunity from him then. The guy said that these bottles were a gift and how Oliver got them is unclear. The hero asked if he wanted to say that all this was Moran's plan. The man replied that he had nothing to do with it and let them call Moran here. Soon the man arrived and asked if His Majesty had called him. When he arrived at the poppy, the blood immediately rushed towards him. But suddenly a shield appeared that protected him. The guy said that he thought who had the courage to attack a nobleman in the middle of the day, and it turned out to be a bastard. The man who arrived turned out to be an Allen, and said that according to the sacred laws of the Empire, Moran is a baron. This means that even if the guy kills him, he will only have to apologize to the Cooper family and pay them compensation in gold. This means he is still alive, and being a raven, Moran did not violate any laws of the Empire. Then she greeted His Majesty and apologized for this guy. The prince replied that such a mad dog should be kept behind bars. He stated that it had been a while since he had seen the bastard, so I wonder if he was ready to go back to his cage. The mentor told the guy that he surprised him with his reaction today. He's talking about that guy from the Cooper family who was throwing mud at him in front of everyone else. The man was disgusted to hear this, but he wasn't even angry. The hero asked why he was angry because he had already dealt with him. But that guy is protected by the damn shadow moment, so he won't die. And only those from the Cooper family will suffer. Alan's mother would not leave her son alone, and believes that she and the head of the family are also here. In addition to all this, the second prince, Sandra, was tasked with holding a meeting to exchange new students of the academy. Rather, he invited all the heads of the family. Sal was attacked by several knights who asked him not to fool Chris, but the guy reacted calmly to this. He defended himself with a weapon and said that there would be many high-level knights at the exchange meeting and they would also want to fight him. While he was speaking, he destroyed his opponents with his enormous power. The mentor smiled and said that this was good. He had clearly matured. The man recently arranged a meeting with the director. He is extremely interested in his magic and wants to study it in more detail so that something good can come of it. Soon the director met with the guy and asked him to use his strong techniques. The hero objected, but the old man remarked, if he doesn't respect him, then he will start first. And his magic really did start its attack very soon. Sal was surprised and thought how he calculated the summoning spell without words. It was lucky that he protected with his blood magic. This blow was comparable to the attack of a swordmaster. A training dummy of Albus was used, and the headmaster noticed that he was not in the best shape, but could still handle the master of the golden sword. Having rushed into the attack, the hero immediately used the fourth technique of bloody fencing called Bloodstorm. The old man said the scope was good, but the efficiency was poor, so you should try to increase the strength with your own blood. The guy eventually tried to do this by performing his instant attack. Albus noticed that he was too forgetful, and the blood demon would not miss an opportunity. He feeds on the life force of other creatures, and the village only strengthens it. The guy was constantly using high-level techniques, burning a lot of blood even while the creature was conscious, and that voice was exactly like Brad Cooper's. Chris shouted to the director that he couldn't continue to see the guy any longer. He couldn't stand it. The hero asked not to worry, because he had strength. The man replied that in order to protect the guy from the demon, you need to catch the right moment and lock the monster in chains. He forbade Sal from using blood magic until he learned to control the law demon. Sal said the exchange meeting was starting soon, and he wouldn't be able to use his techniques. The mentor noted that he needed to master it quickly, and the essence of blood was control and manipulation. The old man added that he was only used to relying on bloody fencing. The spirit said that the troops raised by the first and second generations of Lord Coopers were invincible, and then all died in one night. But the only interesting thing is what happened. The hero wondered if the master of bloody fencing had become enraged. This explains why there is no mention of this event in the books. Albus said that you have many friends studying at their academy that he must take care of. So if he does not want them to die at his hands, he must learn to control the demon. Sal said that he understood everything and thanked the mentor and suggested that they go and start special training. Ultimately, the fewer people who know about this secret training, the better. Chris thought about how many birds there were in this forest and how soon the academy would become lively. The raven that was there the whole time turned out to be a woman. Upon arrival, she changed her appearance and said that it was just a medicinal bath. This drunken lord did it on purpose and everything was bad. The girl's name is Luna Forest and she is a student with high talent.